Now, some people say that 2025 is an unusual year. In just the past 100 days, President Donald Trump has put tariffs on almost the entire world, including islands with penguins on them. And also, Israel has officially extended the war into Iran, and India and Pakistan have been trading missiles into each other's territory. Now, several countries are teetering on the edge of crippling debt. And in fact, many experts, not just myself, experts of every sort, are now warning about the potential for an AI takeover of whatever shape and form that you can think of. And so the question really is how much of all of this is newspaper noise and which ones are actually emblematic of the AI era that we are going into. And I think even more importantly is, are there things happening in the world right now, which is happening right before our eyes, but then nobody is talking about it. And we're not necessarily realizing that how important these things are. And also, if you think about it, human opinion and judgment haven't always been very good at helping us to forecast accurately what's about to happen. So a good example is something like this. Now, in the 1900s, the congressmen thought that Americans will always need horses. So that's a long time ago, but that's when the motor car first came up. And of course, people were concerned about whether they were still going to need horses. Horses is just a rich man's plaything now. What you see here, on the left-hand side is Fifth Avenue in New York City in 1900. Now, 13 years later, all the horses disappeared. So the good news is that you can train humans to drive a car, but the question is what happened to those horses? And I actually did the research. What they did was, there were millions of those horses, like everyone had horses in their family. They slaughtered all the horses. Okay, that's the truth. They slaughtered the horses because who's going to feed all these horses, right? And also, in January of 2020, and this is important because actually 5 years ago, in January 2020, I was standing on this stage telling people that the world was going to shut down. And you got to know how scary that is because nobody else was saying that the world was going to shut down. And then I told my audience, and the audience is like, bo, right? So they had that, like, are you sure or not kind of face. And now in 2020, the Delta Airlines CEO said that supply chains are fail-proof and panic over pandemics is overblown. And of course, we all knew what happened after that. Now, we also had Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce. Now, at the time, people were very concerned about AI, like they still are, replacing humans. And he said that no AI can replicate human connection. That was in 2022. Now, in 2023, he fired 8,000 of his employees, and most of them were from the customer service department, right? Because apparently AI can replace human connection. Now, on top of that, you also had people like Barack Obama saying back in 2016 that no dictator could ever rise here. Our institutions are too strong. We all knew what happened just 5 years later, 4 years later, actually. And of course, if you go back further in time, but because humans have always done this, right? We always think it's not going to happen. And Virgil, the poet from the Roman Empire, said, I set no limits to their fortune and no time. I have given them empire without end. And we all know that this actually looks like hubris and complacency nowadays because we know what happened to Rome. And so the question I want to ask is how many times, right, does history and astrological cycles have to repeat itself again and again to prove so that people will actually listen? And which is why today I have to tell you that I should tell you in advance that the news isn't going to be super great today. Okay, and that's I don't think anyone's going to be very surprised. Usually when I bother the whole event. Unfortunately, I don't waste your time telling you good news, sorry, okay? But I do have to frame a couple of things, just so that everyone is clear before we start. That first of all, sometimes the news report may differ, right, from what I'm saying today, because sometimes, like the Salesforce CEO, they have incentive to not tell you the truth. That's a reality. And sometimes it's because their forecasts are based on Earth era data. So that means if they say things like, the last time this happened, or there's going to be a recession, or this thing happened, and usually the SOP is this, and that worked like 15 years ago, but now the SOP a bit changed, and we might start to see SOP that we never see before. Okay, so that's one thing I want to mention. And of course, necessarily speaking, most of you probably already know a few obvious things, like the fact that AI is coming, who don't know, right? And also the fact that some countries are not going to do so fantastically economically. But what I think astrology can help is with the timing, right? Because then it's not useful to say, oh, it's coming, then you mean 15 years from now or tomorrow, it makes a difference, right? And also, and the nature of the forecast that I'm doing today requires me to talk about technology. It requires me to talk about finance, and I have to tell everybody here, I'm not an expert in any of those things. My expertise is in astrology. Okay, and so that means that you really have to do your own research, and please don't take any of this as financial advice or life advice, okay? So that's an important disclaimer. So what am I covering today? First chapter is why 2025 is a pivotal year. And why is it that I didn't show up in the last 2 years? Because there was nothing to say. And this year I bothered to do this whole thing is because I got a lot of things to say, okay? And the next chapter is we want to go into history. So what I promised all of you is that I actually went and did almost like 2,000 years worth of astrological calculations just so that I'm looking for a pattern. I'm looking for something that repeats itself over and over again, and my job is to turn the lens and to show you how would that play out in today's world, okay? And also, of course, what's important is who thrives and who nosedives. We want to know who's going to make it and who's not. Okay, and also then I will go into my forecast. I will present chapter 2 and 3 together because I think they make sense together. And lastly, I will do Singapore's forecast. As you can see, Singapore has its own category. You decide for yourself whether it's going to be a happy story or a bad story. And I also cover a bit of the transition plan. So given what's happening in the world, what might be smart for us to be doing? Okay, so first of all, let's get a sense of where are we on humanity timeline. Because now everybody knows that we are 2025, but where are we in history, right? Okay, so what you see on this diagram here, which I will go into in detail later, is now I'm going to draw that box around it because that's the time period that most of us know. So everybody seated here in this auditorium, you were either born in that box or you had your childhood and your upgrowing years in that box. And those are also the years that you are most concerned about, which is just about the next 20 to 30 years, which are the years that you can do something about. So that line over there is 2020 when I did my first forecast event right here on this stage. And what you see there is the Earth era, okay? And I will cover this in more detail, but basically what you see is that there is a interlocking period between 1981 to 2020. Now the star is where we are, because we are 2025, 5 years into the air era. And what's important is to realize that the Earth era is no more. We are already 5 years into the pure air era. And if I were to zoom in into that orange box, now why 2025 is super important is because you can see here that when outer planets change sign, so what happens is that in the sky, you have planets that change sign every few intervals or so. Now 2 years ago, Pluto changed sign, Neptune changed sign this year, and we're also going to have Uranus changing sign this year. And even as a layman, even if you don't know astrology, and you look at that thing, and then you realize that the story, the color pre-2025 and the color after like a bit different. So immediately what this tells you is that governments will have new priorities. Companies will have new priorities. And that's why I suggest that it's time you think about whether you need to have some new priorities as well. And the star again is where we are. And what you see there, this new dotted line here, is that my forecast is going to focus on that narrow area there because I strongly suspect that our world is not going to know what to do with that sudden change. And many, many countries are going to struggle with the transition. Okay, so let's start off with chapter 1, which is the outer planets changing sign. Because, now let me give you a sense of why this is important, okay? Because every time the outer planets change sign, it gives us a new ice cream flavor for how the world behaves itself. So the planet Pluto is known in Chinese as the Yan Luo Wang, or the Hades, the god of death. And in fact, what happens with Pluto is that it tells you where people are afraid. So some of the more mature people here, you all remember the years when after 9/11, right? You know how everybody was so afraid about religion and like the fact that there's going to be jihad, somebody going to bomb you. And at the time, the fear was real. And then you remember that in 2008, when Pluto first went into Capricorn, now we all knew that because the financial crisis happened, Lehman Brothers collapsed. And many people seated here were actually victims of that particular crisis. Now, every time Pluto goes into a new sign, it makes its presence known. So that means the last time was financial crisis. Now we are going to see what happens, because in 2023, just as it went into Aquarius, this guy showed up, ChatGPT. right? And I think now AI has been around for a long time, but this was a milestone because then AI went into the average person. So now your average auntie, uncle, grandmother, everybody was using AI, right? And so of course this was a subject of fascination for a lot of people. Like everybody went and tried it. But it also meant that many people, even the first time you try it, you're like, wow, xiao liao, I tell you. This one is going to like replace everything. This thing can do everything that I can do. So now we're in trouble, isn't it? And in fact, some of the new developments is that this is not just AI. Now this one is a new chip from Google, and it's a quantum computing chip. I'm not going to pretend to tell you very much about it, apart from the fact that it is fast. I know everyone said, yeah, the chip is fast. Let's see how fast, okay? Now, this sentence is something that I took from the article itself, and it says that the Willow chip does, in minutes, what it would take leading supercomputers 10 septillion years to complete. Now, that is really fast. Okay, and some people here may be thinking, yeah, I'm not a tech person, doesn't matter. Now, let me show you what the impact is, okay, when you have chips that exist in this world. And I want to caveat, this thing is quite expensive, which means that you can't buy it. You don't have the billions of dollars to buy it. But let's just say, now Google's also discovered that when you have a chip so fast, that actually it can crack your Bitcoin wallet, it can crack your bank code. So one of the reasons why our encryptions are so secure is because people think that there's no way that we're going to be able to crack that code. So let's just assume that this is correct. Okay, again, I'm not a tech person. You have to verify for yourself whether this is true or not. But assuming this is true, then it means that if I had the money to buy or to build a chip like that, I could own everything in the world. I could, technically, right? So basically, that possibility is there. And by the way, that's the chip in 2025. We don't know what chip is going to come out in 2027. And so what I'm trying to show everybody here is that it challenges the idea of banking, the absolute idea that you want to put your money there, okay? And also, if you think about how tech also calls into question things like, this kind of screen, I think everybody here kena at least once before, right? You got locked out from your Facebook account, then it's like then they tell you violated some terms of policy, which you don't even know what you did, they just lock you out, then the password doesn't work, right? And then you try to go to the website like facebook.com, and you try to find a human to call and say, hey, hello, like I'm me lah, I'm not trying to hack into my own account. There isn't a human on the line. It is not possible to get someone on the line and say, sorry, I'm me. And what this means is that, for now, what will you lose? Maybe your pictures, maybe your films, your movie, video. But the thing is, very soon, a lot of us here are business people. Your data is on your Dropbox, your data is on your Google Suite or whatever. You get locked out, you could lose all your IP in 1 second. It is the truth, right? And so this is it's a funny story, but it's also very sad. Okay? So this guy, Stefan Thomas, owns 321 million USD in Bitcoin. And he thought he was very safe when he put it on a high secure drive. Until then he wrote down the password on a piece of paper and then he lost the paper. Okay, now the thing about this very secure drive is that you have 10 tries to try the password. When you're up to the 10 tries, it will encrypt itself until nobody can crack it. And so he tried and then he kept getting it wrong until he left 2 tries. As of now, in 2025, he got 2 tries left. If he try another 2 more times and he cannot, right, he's going to lose that money. And by the way, it's not 321 million. First, that's in USD, and if you look carefully, the article is 2021. My understanding is right now that thing is worth 600 million Sing dollars. Okay, he got that much money, and he cannot access it, right, because he forgot his password. Okay, and so now going forward here is that now it questions another thing that's even more scary. Because as more and more of your life becomes digital, and it means that that password is all important. It holds your assets, it holds your identity. And as your life is online, if you cannot prove your identity, then you cannot do anything. Now, last time, in the Earth era, if you had an IC or a passport, this is proof of who you are. And a personal experience of mine is that recently I had to do something with my phone line. And so, to set up my phone line in my new phone, I had to prove my identity. So I thought, okay, no problem, I go SingPass, right? And then I key in my whatever. And then they said, okay, for security reasons, we need to send you an SMS. Then, okay, wait, I'm setting up my phone line. How I receive SMS? I cannot receive SMS, right? And so then I was thinking, jialat. So now I can't have a phone line because I can't prove my identity, and I can't prove my identity because I don't have a phone line. Okay, great. So, you know what I mean? It's a stupid thing, right? So I toddled myself down to the telco company, and I brought my IC with me because I thought, okay, never mind. All you need to do is verify my identity, right? So I go there, I show my face, I say, hello, I'm May Sim. And then these people were like, the staff looked at me and said, you tell me no use, you got to tell the app. Then I'm like, hey, look, I'm here, my IC, I prove that this is my IC number, and then it didn't work. And of course, later on, I had to do a whole bunch of gymnastics to get my phone line set up. But the point here is that we've come to a point that your IC and your passport is not enough to get your world functional, which means the tech companies, the truth is, they do have your life on the line, on a password. Now, further on, Aquarius also tells us that the threat here is the climate change thing. Now, I'm not going to go and cover all the obvious things that you already know, but look at this list here. It's researched by the University of Southampton, and what you see here, the top 20 countries that are exposed to coastal flooding. Now, look at the list of those countries, those cities. They are not like useless cities. These are cities that are economic, political, and cultural centers. Now, on the right-hand column, you can see that's in billions, the amount of assets that are there. And it doesn't tell you how many people are there, how many companies are there. Now, this list of cities are so common that I'm very sure that seated here in this auditorium, some of you have been to some of those cities in recent years, recent months even. Now, I want to challenge you that the last time you were in those cities, did you see the people urgently planning to get out of there? Did you see people moving their office and their property out of there? Or is it business as usual, people just moving around acting like they're going to be there for the next 200 years? You know, and so the reality here is that I think it's going to come quickly. There are some cities, now you pick any of those cities on the list, and if one day the flooding actually gets so bad, right, that's the amount of assets in billions, not to count the number of people who are there. And another thing I want you to imagine is that, let's just say, you know how sea level rise, right? You know how when water rise, they all rise at the same time, you know what I mean, right? It's not one place rise, and then it's like basically all rise at the same time. And imagine right now if 30%, don't say all, 30% of those cities all need to move at the same time. Now you imagine the nightmare that will come. Okay, so basically Pluto in Aquarius is going to remain there for 21 years. Now that remains a very, very strong possibility. Now you imagine that, okay? Now we also see that the people and authority will change. So Forbes has already showed that 37% of managers would rather hire AI than offer jobs to Gen Z. So what is the implication here? Is that some of us here who are a bit older, if you realize that you don't have a lot of Gen Z colleagues, right, partially because they don't feel like applying to work in your company. They look at the way you work, they don't feel like joining you, right? And also the fact is, when they join, then they get fired within 3 months. That's another article that I didn't show you, right? They don't last because the old folks don't really like their style and their attitude. So what this means ultimately is that companies are not going to get new blood. Truth, right? So the thing is, you look at the company that you work in right now, do you really think that there's going to be like another few decades of youngsters joining you? I don't think so. Then what happens to companies? Now, of course, then there are some obvious things. In 2023, when this thing moved into Aquarius, then the Houthis went and blocked up the Red Sea, and of course, it killed all your supply chains, right? And of course, then the Hamas thing happened in October. Now, very recently, Ukraine actually managed to counterattack Russia. I know some people are like, yes, right? So basically, small guy, big guy, right? And these drones are cheap things. $300. And of course, at the time, it hit the newspapers. And of course, people got concerned about it because it meant that poor countries can now attack rich countries with billions of dollars in weapons. But let me give you a different idea, okay? Now, consider that in the Earth era, did you realize that actually we got very few wars? I know we got World War I or World War II, but you compare with other parts of history, we are the most peaceful in human history, right? But do you know why? One of the reasons is because wars are very expensive. And not just because of the weapons, but because, can you imagine being the prime minister on stage, right? Then you go and fight a war, then all the dead bodies come back. How are you going to explain to all the aunties that your son went to war and they didn't come back? So you don't want your own people to hate you, then you better don't go to war, because that's the real cost of war, is human life. The problem now is that when you can fight a war with $300 drones, then we can all expect wars to times 10, times 100. They will happen more often because they are cheap, right? Because then if all the broken bots come back, who cares? you know. And of course, one other thing here is the dispassionate ideology, that in the Earth era, we all thought that, okay, we have a treaty. We used to take our treaties very seriously, you know. And right now, the treaty is like, in fact, Donald Trump has actually torn up a few treaties already. So and when I say he tear it up, I mean he literally tear it up in front of a camera, right? And one of the big things that you're going to hear a lot is, do you have the cards? That's what he asked Zelensky in this clip. And that's the big thing that people need to think about, not just country level, but also in keeping your job. Do you have the cards? Right? In basically, you want to marry somebody, do you have the cards? And that's the kind of way people are thinking nowadays. It's like it's a transactional exchange. Okay, so now I told you what to expect in that 21 years that Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. But I also want to tell you that every time a planet moves into a new sign, it also departs the last sign. So that means there are a few things that I recommend that you don't invest too much of your time and energy into. Because when Pluto was in Capricorn, big companies was the thing, right? And you saw all your 7-Eleven, your Econ Minima, all kinda like killed by Amazon, right? So basically, when I say big company, I mean like big company. And the people here who are traders and stockbrokers, you know about the Magnificent Seven. So basically, the whole stock market gonna eaten up by 7 companies. Basically, everyone else is like almost irrelevant already. And that is what happened in the Pluto in Capricorn phase. Now, what this means is right now you are trying to build a company, and you think that you are going to IPO it at some like crazy Facebook price, right? It's probably not going to happen. And to try and inspire people, hey guys, you know, I'm the CEO of whatever, I want to IPO this thing, and please all of you come and invest in my IPO. It feels a bit hollow, you know what I mean? Like nobody really interested to buy already, you know? So that's something that you really have to consider. I'm not sure that that's the way to do business moving forward, okay? Because people are not interested. Okay, next one is Neptune in Aries. Now, Aries is important because it tells us what is hope in this particular world. So in the past, you had people who put their hope in things like religion, they put their hopes in like certain heroes. And so when we look at, and it's going to be there for 14 years. Now first, let's start with the happy story first. When Neptune is in Aries, now the sign Aries is very energetic. It's about action. And this is why you are going to combine vision with action. And which means what you will see coming out a lot, social entrepreneurship. So when Neptune is in Aries, the good news is that they don't just want to sit around feeling sorry for themselves, you know, they actually want to take action. Okay, so that's the nice part. You will see more people building businesses that are based on your hobbies. And some people have been following me for the last, 4 or 5 years now. And you know, I've been talking about this ad nauseum. Go start that business, you know, even with side hustle, you can really look at it. Now, you also see that the idea of leadership will now change. And so basically, for the people here who are not Singaporeans, I will give you some context, okay? So Singapore recently had our general election, and the thing about Singapore is that you never ever want to run as an independent candidate because you confirm lose, right? So that's a thing in Singapore. And usually the people who bother to run are like cannot make it one, and everyone knows it. However, this election, something very strange happened because we actually had 2 candidates that look like can vote one, potentially can vote one. At least it's not like immediately like cannot one, you know? And so, and they were both young men, and they were both men who actually painted a bit of a vision, especially Jeremy Tan, who painted a vision that was a little bit different from what people normally hear. Right? At least people were willing to pause and listen a bit, you know? And what this means is that, and the other funny thing is, did he really think he was going to win? Did anyone here really think he was going to win? Probably not, right? Nobody really thought he had a chance. And he knows that he's a smart guy. He knows he wasn't going to win, but he tried anyway. And that's what you will see coming up in Neptune in Aries. There will be a lot of people who start businesses that don't make sense one. That means you know that if you press the calculator and you go look at how much work they need to do, it's like, why you do this? Cannot make money, won't win, but then you still want to do. And they will tell you, no, it's time that we change the narrative. We need to tell a different story, right? So you will hear these kind of phrases over and over again. And that's why the social entrepreneurship most of the time is don't make money, right? And then they will still go and build it anyway. Okay, so you will see this a lot. Okay, then another one is activism. It's going to be very strong. And now I will say in a very nice way, activism is a nice way. Protest, riot, all these are also activism lah. Depends on how violent you want to get lah. Some people very peaceful, show plakat. Some people decide to punch your face. So that is going to be more prevalent in the world. What you see here is this thing called Stand Up for Science. And this one I can attest to personally because as an astrologer, I've had quite a few of my clients who are in the science industry who come and tell me that they've done research, they found cures to diseases, but you know the company doesn't release the drugs because they have a previous patent for a drug that treats a symptom. So they don't want to release a drug that cures you. So they rather you keep eating medicine and die, basically, right? And a lot of these scientists, now in the past, in the Earth era, you would shut up. Because if you are a researcher, then you need research money, right? You go and pauto one pharmaceutical, then it guarantees that you will never ever get any pharmaceutical or any university that will ever fund your research. So then you just shut up and just let them do whatever they want. But the thing is, what happens with Neptune in Aries, like I said, this is a don't make sense one, right? Because then now all the scientists, and recently there's been quite a few now, especially in the US, they started to come out and speak against their company. And then if you press calculator, you're like, hey, why you do this? It doesn't make any sense. And then they will say, because we need to tell a new story. We need a new narrative. And the funny thing is, in the Earth era, people do things that don't make sense. In the Air era, people do things that don't make sense when you press calculator. But they will do it. Okay, now, of course, then we want to talk about this idea of sadness, because Neptune is about victimization, how people feel sad. And if it's in Aries, then the narrative here is that things are happening too fast, probably true, and most people will find it very, very hard to keep up. And I suspect, for obvious reasons, it is the older folk who will suffer a little bit more on this. Now, especially, even for the younger folk, I'm like somewhere in between, I'm 40, right? So it's like, I like to imagine that I can keep up with the tech, but sometimes I talk to a few young folk. Like, I got a few young folk, like Zachary Tan, for example, he's very young to me. Like, he showed me some AI thing, I was like, I don't understand what he's saying really. He's like, and I'm not even that old. You know what I'm saying? So the reality is, it's hard to keep up. Okay, let's talk about what is the implication. Okay, as Neptune moves into Aries, it will exit Neptune in Pisces. Now, this is very relevant for all the people here, and I know there's quite a number of you, who want to do coaching businesses. You want to do healing businesses. And in the last 14 years, since 2011, and I'm sure most of you remember, do you remember in 2011, when it moved there, suddenly, right, everybody depressed. Suddenly, every company must have wellness program, right? And then it's like suddenly now all these people don't feel like coming to work. Then they can take leave for mental health reasons, right? And then suddenly now you got all these programs that people need to talk about their feelings and stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying what is a good thing is that people are not just sitting around feeling sorry for themselves. That means don't just everybody go therapy. Right now, when Neptune is in Aries, people are sick and tired of like feeling sad and sorry. They want an action plan. So anybody here who is thinking about doing a coaching business, please don't plan to sit there and hold someone's hand and cry, okay? It won't work one. Nobody wants to sign up for your thing. What they want to see is there an action plan that comes after it? And Aries must have an objective, a goal, right? And if you just sit around feel good, I tell you, it will never work. Okay, last one here is Uranus in Gemini. Now this one is, Uranus is very useful because it works on a 7-year cycle. And this is particularly useful for business people. And anyone here who I hope that you are seriously thinking about doing a self-employed thing. Because trust me, that's going to be the smarter thing to do in the Air era than in the Earth era. So now, Uranus in Gemini will tell us what is the latest cool thing. So every time if you see, like, you know, when we were back when we were all a lot younger, there was like Tamagotchi, and then like Tetris was like the coolest thing. Everybody was playing it. And then you had like social media. So basically, it tells you what's the latest craze, basically. So when Uranus is in Gemini, it covers what is the kind of technology that we are going, what kind of social trends are going to get challenged in the world. Now, the first one, Gemini is associated with transport. And it doesn't have to be like car, train, that kind of transport. It's just the idea of moving from point A to point B, essentially. So I show you the obvious one first, the drone thing. So drones are clearly a lot more important today than they were like 10 years ago. This thing probably going to be more prevalent in other countries, probably not Singapore because of the high-rise thing. But it also tells you that as a whole, if you live in Singapore, if you live in KL, where there's a lot of these high-rise buildings, it means that maybe you might be a lot less familiar with drone technology than the rest of the world. So basically, other people using this cool thing, right? And because we are high-rise, then, you know, all the restricted zone, all the army zone, Istana zone, all cannot use, right? So that means we are not going to be as familiar. Now, another one here is things like transport. And you know how in the past they talk about like flying cars and that kind of stuff. And sometimes, by the way, it is really here. You can't fly in Singapore, obviously, but you know, the flying car is here. And this thing is a maglev train. When I was doing my research and I heard about this maglev train, I thought it was like some Russian word, you know. And then I realized afterwards it stands for magnetic levitation. And what it means is that the magnet will just lift the train and then it moves. Essentially, what you have is a flying train, right? And if you make a note of this, you might want to go home and go on YouTube and look for a video of the maglev train. It's quite scary. Now, the fastest speed of this thing goes up to about 600 plus kilometers per hour. 600 plus kilometers per hour, guys, right? And think about how this transforms travel. Okay, and if you do a bit of comparison, plus in terms of the eco-friendliness, my understanding is this thing runs on electricity. So it doesn't run on airplane fuel. And maybe for the older folk, you'll be like, hey, I think the plane is faster. But then the young people care about eco-friendly. Right? So they actually care about what's your carbon footprint, right? Now, there's a good chance that train travel is going to be a little bit more popular than air travel because of the eco-friendly thing. And by the way, it's probably not slower, if you know what I'm trying to say. It's probably not slower. So when you have a choice, you go for eco-friendly, right? Now, another thing that might be challenged is this idea of transport in terms of moving goods and supply chains. And one very good reason is because as the wars start to expand and replicate themselves, then supply chains are going to be in trouble. I don't think you are all surprised to hear that. And it means that if you want to buy things, it gets a bit expensive, and also the shipping got a bit expensive because you need to put a risk factor on your shipping, isn't it? And which is why if you think about sending things, for example, if my brother is in Canada and I want to send him a birthday present, instead of going online, buy something, then add the shipping on it, I could just buy a blueprint and send it to him. And if he has a 3D printing machine, then he can just print it and happy birthday, brother. Because then basically this challenges your idea. And of course, in terms of technology, right now it's not that great, but it will get there. And also, this is something I found, you can actually 3D print houses nowadays. So there are projects that are being experimented on by the big tech companies. They are building entire cities, entire streets of with 3D houses. And again, this is also challenges the idea of like, do you really need to transport all the construction material? And think about, there are some people here who are economically trained. Think about how much of every country's GDP comes from construction. Just think about it, right? If you've done the research, you go to, just pick your favorite country and go and see how much of their GDP comes from real estate construction. Now, this thing makes a huge dent. If everybody starts doing this, it's a huge effect on your GDP. Now, another thing is things like comms network. What you see here is this thing is called a mesh network. I first heard about it many years ago. And the reason why many people don't know this exists, now how it works is that you basically want to send WhatsApp to your friend, right? And now you need a StarHub or a mobile phone sort of like subscription to do it because you need to use people's towers. You need to use people's like satellite. Now this thing uses other users as nodes. So for example, if I want to send a message to the gentleman over there, basically I just type the message, it will just bounce off all these other people, and then it will just reach him. And this is free. You don't need to pay for it. And the reason why you haven't heard about it is because it's free lah. They don't want you to know ma. Then if everybody has that, then everybody will get free internet forever, you know, right? And so this, so things like comms network, I'm not saying that this thing is going to be big. I'm challenging the idea that you can actually connect to anything and everything for free during this period. Now you talk about things like ideas and thinking. Some cool things is that you want to challenge the idea that you need to know coding in order to do well in the era. Because there are websites like this, Replit, I found this. I'm not a coder myself, I know very little about tech. And you can actually put your idea in simple English, put there, and let the thing code for you. And I tried it myself. I used it to build a little, you know, like a little nifty astrology tool for myself, and it worked. It worked. It took me a few tries. Not his fault, my fault. I don't know how to write the prompt. So it took me a few tries, but it was free, guys. you can have coders for free, and it means that if you are 66 years old and you don't know anything about tech, you can go there and describe your app. You might need to take a few more tries maybe, but you'll get there. So the thing is, if anybody here says that you totally 100% cannot get into tech, that's rubbish. Get on this thing. Right? And RELC is just one of many, many websites. I'm not marketing for them. There are many of these things, and it's free. And so you get the problem with AI here is that increasingly people are not even bothering with Google anymore. Have you all realized, like, people just don't bother, they just go and ask, like, this fella, right? And one big issue is that last time, if you go to a website, the company or the person can decide that I will have all these things to tell you, like the way I'm doing today. You're sitting there passively while I show you what I have, right? But the thing is, when you come to this, you have to be the one driving the information. So that means you are no longer like open to information. You only decide what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear. So that becomes one issue. Now, another thing that you will see is that it tells you the answer and it gives you one answer. Consider how when you use Google, you type something like lizards, right, into the Google thing, it gives you 100,000 different links. Then you go and click yourself and decide who you believe, who you don't believe, right? But the thing is now they cut through that. They tell you whatever you want to know about lizards, and there's only one answer. You just accept the answer. So that becomes something that we all want to think about, and it becomes a threat to our society. And the last thing is also that it doesn't show you the working. It just gives you the answer. You just assume he's correct. Right? And he doesn't tell you, okay, because I saw this website, then I aggregated the information. Now, unless you are a coder who can get into the thinking of the AI system, it doesn't. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that we kind of, if we let this get in, people stop thinking. Okay? And that is something that each of us here, because most of us here are not like super ultra young. And that means that you have some expertise in your field, and perhaps one of the ways in which you can play a role is to make sure that the knowledge expertise in your field stays alive. Because otherwise, people really don't think and they just accept the answer, no? Okay, so what happens is that, let's look at what doesn't work anymore. Okay, because when Uranus moves into Gemini, it exits Taurus. And what you will notice in the past 7 years is you take Uranus, which is technology, and you combine it with money. So for example, everyone remember when everyone was trying to sell you some crypto thing? I'm not talking about Bitcoin, I'm talking about all the other like crypto stuff, right? And did you remember when what was really, really big was NFTs? Okay, and NFTs kind of came and gone a little bit. But my point here is that Uranus come quick, leave quick also. Now another thing that happened during Uranus in Taurus is e-commerce. And you remember in those days when they said, oh, e-commerce is coming. And then some people said, yeah, not possible. Some things cannot buy online. Have you heard people saying things like mattress cannot buy online? People want to go there and sit and touch. In the end, mattress sales is online, right? And then they said women will never buy clothes online. Must see, must touch, must try. Not true. They all start buying clothes online. And so the thing is, what happens with Uranus is that at the beginning, people don't believe because it's a bit too crazy. Until it actually happened, then you're like, oh shit, man, this actually happened. Right? So that's Uranus in Taurus. So it means that right now, if you are thinking of doing a mobile app, or you try to e-commerce something, I'm not saying that it's going to disappear completely, but it's not the hottest thing. So that means you can still use e-commerce to sell your stuff, but I probably wouldn't set up a company to help people build mobile apps because it's just not the hottest thing anymore. Okay, so Uranus in Taurus, watch out for that. Also the idea of work from home. You know how at the beginning they said, work from home not possible, then COVID happened, then everybody work from home, right? They said some trades can, some trades cannot. In the end, every trade can. Every trade can work from home, and then jialat already, right? So that's what is going to happen. Now, if I'm accurate about Uranus in Gemini, then there are quite a few things that won't age very well. These are real articles, I got them online. And then you all take photo, right? So that in 3 years' time, when you go back and look at the photo, then you can just laugh at them, okay? Because it won't happen. Okay, number one, this one is from entrepreneur.com. Apparently, an MIT economist has said that AI isn't revolutionary change, and the benefits are exaggerated. He says less than 5% of human jobs will be affected by AI. So this one, I tell you, antique. Because I tell you another thing that I discovered when I was doing research for this, okay? You know how now newspapers and magazines went online, right? And you know how last time, if you're a bit older, last time people used to keep the magazine. Then you can go back and see the 20 years ago article, right? But now, because it's online, you know what they do? When they say wrong things like that, they scrub it off the internet. Cannot find already. Yeah, and so that's why when I went online to try to find articles to prove to my audience, right, that there are really people who say that mattress nobody will buy online one. I cannot find anywhere on the internet, you believe not? Nobody said like people will buy mattress online. Yeah, right. Right? You all remember seeing those articles, right? They say women will never buy clothes online. God, right? I tell you, you try go online now, you cannot find a single article. You know why? They all delete already. And what this means is that's another thing. You can't trust what you read online now, right? Because they say wrong thing, they can delete. Right? So this one, I think you should screenshot it. I tell you, then you can go tell entrepreneur.com that your MIT economist say that, you know, exaggerated. Now another one, this one is from Codesmith, and they said AI won't replace coders, that AI cannot survive without coders. I would take this if I were you. This is a website from like a coder's website. So yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not a tech person, but even I know that's not true. Okay, so you can do that. Okay, so now the other thing I want to cover quickly here is that let's think about what will emerge. Now we combine all three together, and this will give you an idea of what to expect in the next 7 years. Number one is that companies used to go with profit. But now you're going to start to see a lot of organizations that they either have some kind of political agenda or there's some kind of narrative that they're trying to push. Okay, and you know how last time people would say, yeah, you want to know who's in charge? Follow the money. Used to be follow the money. Now change, follow the data. Right? What do you think Elon Musk was doing when he barged into the treasury there? You know, seriously, he only managed to save like what, a few $100 billion. What he wanted was the data, guys, right? So follow the data and you know who's in charge. And also another thing is, you remember in the past, when your website gonna hack, right? You know what the hackers want? They send you a link, they say pay me Bitcoin, right? Basically, they hack your website, what they want is money. Now they don't. Now when the hacker hack your website, there's no amount of money you can pay that will make him give you back your website, because what he wants is you dead. He wants you off the internet, wants you off the face of the earth. And that means that now negotiation becomes a little bit more difficult, because it's not like I give you money, then you can go away. Because if this was so simple, then the Israel-Gaza thing can be easily solved, right? Okay, you want to build resort on the thing. Okay, fine, I give you one piece of land now. Now we shake hands and okay. But no, the whole story is now I want you disappeared, right? So basically, the conversation is a different conversation altogether. Now, what you also see is that when you put these three signs together, many of you here are my students. So you will know that when you put Aquarius, Aries, and Gemini together, this combination is in traditional astrology known as barren signs. Barren means not fertile. So one of the things that will happen is that the fertility crisis among humans, whether you're having kids or not now, that's going to go down even further in the air era. So fewer and fewer babies. Now another thing is fertility also affects food production. And what you see on this screen is that basically food got very, very expensive in the last 2 years. Like the price just went up, and this is not I say, IMF and United Nations say. And that also means that as the price goes up, look at the food insecurity. So basically it used to be, at the lowest point, 600 million. Yes, those are the poor countries. The Africa people got nothing to eat. And then now it went up by almost double now. It will double, sorry, it's not double now, but it's another 300 million. And those people are not from the poor countries. They are from the rich countries. So people are basically starving right now. Don't say it's not going to happen to your country. My understanding is it's already happening here. Okay, so some of the wrap-ups here is like with regard to careers, is that we used to say that when the robots come, then he will do all the things that you don't like to do. Then you can go do what you like to do, right? But then now the thing is, actually the only job available is the thing that the robot cannot do. Right? And basically everybody else will get displaced as soon as they are delivering decent results. For obvious reasons, he's free. He works 24/7. And of course, you will be told the narrative that there will be new jobs, and there will be temporarily, because they need people to supervise the robot and to make sure that they are safe. So until they are safe, so you have a job until they are safe, then you are not safe. Okay, then the next one is that there will be new jobs, and it used to be that last time when you get a new job, right, then your job is to learn as fast as possible. Now it's different. You get a new job, your job is to teach that fella as fast as possible, because he need to learn. And that means if he learn everything you can teach him, then you are not necessary. Okay, then another thing that people say is that, but then there are all these new opportunities coming out. May tell us what new industries will come up. I can tell you, but there's a very big problem with my answer, because there will be new companies, but think about it, now you're a new entrepreneur. You're going to spend time and effort building something. Are you going to plan for something that will use humans, or you are planning to hire AI? There will be new companies. I'm not sure that they are trying to hire humans, right? So I'm just going by logic here, by combining those three signs, and that is the pattern that you will see in the next 7 years. And I don't think it takes, honestly, for some of you will be thinking you don't even need an astrologer to tell you this, right? Okay, and also, then knowledge will also start disappearing. And this I can share a personal example, because now almost everyone here is either my student, my client, or you've at least gone somewhere and generated your astrology chart before. So you know that there's a robot that does it for you, online one, okay? And I also want to say that actually very few people in the world right now actually know how to calculate a chart from scratch. That means you give me your birthday and your birth time, I can actually calculate everything with no computer. I can do that. But there are not very many people who can do that. You know why? Because it takes time to do that. I can do, but it will take me a few hours, right? Who will do that when you can just go and key in your birth information and generate a chart, right? And the funny thing is now, even if I open class and ask my students come, right, within the first 4 hours, people are like, wow, this is very tedious. I'm like, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. So when I die, which I will eventually, it's quite possible, and I'm one of the youngest astrologers who still know how to do that one skill. When I die, nobody will know how to do it. AI will know, but no one will be able to explain it anymore. And so small things like spelling mistakes. One of my clients told me she has a 17-year-old boy. He asked his mother for a birthday present, and then she almost killed him when she realized he cannot spell the word birthday. Yeah, I'm not kidding, it's real. And she was like, you cannot spell birthday? He said, start with B. Then she was like, and then the rest? And she was like, why need? Got spell check what? 17-year-olds cannot spell birthday now. Okay, I'm telling you. But you can laugh. I ask you, how many of you here can spell diarrhea without spell check? Cannot, right? Because you also use spell check what? Don't blame the youngsters, you also, right? And so the reality is, I'm basically saying to the people here who actually give a damn, right, that some skills, it may be worthwhile to keep it alive, because when you die, no one's going to know how to do it. Because I know when I'm dying, no one can calculate the chart. There are very few astrologers in the world who know how to do it. Okay, and so I'm going to give you a little bit of a story here about the history lesson. Okay, so you will bear with me. Some of you have followed me for a while, so you've seen this before. But and those of you who have the book, you can refer to it. Page 9 to 17 is about the air eras. And so let me show you how it works in history. Okay, so I tell story now, okay? Now, in 2020, the planets Jupiter and Saturn met in the sky. Some of you might remember going out to take picture in the sky. Now, that particular meeting was in the sign of Aquarius, and that's why I colored it that color, because it's an air sign. Now, I put that star there because we are no longer 2020, we are 2025, okay, 5 years after. Now, in 20 years' time, because these two have a habit of meeting in the sky every 20 years, so in 20 years' time, they will meet in 2040 in the sign of Libra. Well and good, okay? So I can keep continuing in the future, but if we want to know what happens during this period, we cannot go future, we need to go past. And now 20 years ago, they met in Taurus. It's a different color because this is an earth sign. And that was when tech became money. You all remember when Facebook IPO'd at 500 plus USD at the time, and everyone lost their minds because they have no revenue, and yet they were still trading at one of the highest fees. Okay, now we go even further back. Now, 20 years ago, and then it was in Libra, and we go even further back. Oh my God, it's like there's that whole stack there of earth signs. And so what I've been talking about this earth era is because there was a contiguous interval where the earth era had been there. And then, of course, in 1981 was when the air era started. And what you will see is that there is an interlocking period of about 40 years. And that's the 40 years that most of us here are familiar with, because that's the era we grew up in, that's the era we lived through as adults. Okay, so why is it that I put that box around there? It's because that is the period that all of us seated in this auditorium, you were born in that box, you grew up in that box, and that is the time period that you care about. Now, every time I go back in history, I will put that box there, so that you aggregation, you know that's kind of where you would have belonged had you lived in that time period. Okay, let's go further back. So I go back in history, so that's where I stopped just now. We will skip the fire era, not relevant. We will skip the water era, not relevant. And we'll come back to here, the 1200s, and I'll put that box there. Okay, because as you can see, it's where there's the interlocking period between earth and air. And looking at what happened there will give us a sense of whether history repeats itself. Okay, so I want to start off with why I'm so worried about the situation now. Okay, and I have to caveat here, there is good news and there's bad news, but I usually like to start with the bad news first. Okay, so don't get too depressed, later got good news. Okay, but let's apply this box. I expand it out properly. And the first one I've talked about before in my past webinars is the Song Dynasty. Now the Song Dynasty is very similar to the world that we have today. Song Dynasty is very rich. They love to send their kids to school because they are hoping that their son is going to to basically do well. Then they can become the 一等官, right, which is like the highest level of the magistrate. Because then your family will do very well. That's the whole idea. And so when we look at the Song Dynasty, first of all, they split in two, and then they had the golden age during the interlocking period. Think about it, just like us, right? Nobody is more rich and more advanced than us. And then what you realize is the Song Dynasty collapsed in the Air era, famously because Genghis Khan came and invaded them. Okay, so that's the history. And in case you think it was just Song Dynasty, just one, you go a bit further south, the Khmer Empire, which is in today's Cambodian area. So they also had their golden era. Angkor Wat was built during their Earth era. You can still visit it today. It is big and very impressive. And then they had their golden age. And then they built Angkor Thom, which is something like their New York City, of the day. And then they started to not do so well economically. So you got your Lehman Brothers collapse. You got your Evergrande collapse. And people are like, oh no, the world is ending, right? And then eventually, the empire didn't collapse completely. But when you're broke, and the other guy got weapons, right? Then what you do is you get on your knees and you submit to their rule. Then they ask you to do what, then you just do what. But he let you be. Okay, so by all intents and purposes, the Khmer Empire collapsed by the time then. They still continue, but they got no power already. Now, in case you thought it's just Asians, let me tell you the Angmo also. Right? So even in Europe, the Holy Roman Empire was so strong during the interlocking period that they could go and sack Constantinople. And that was at the time the Byzantine Empire. You are so strong. And then interregnum begins. And interregnum means, the word means no king. Because everybody want to be king, then everybody fight until somebody be king. And eventually, the Habsburgs won. And because they are the biggest gangster, so the biggest gangster will win. Okay, so that's what happened. And you start to see a pattern now, do you not? Right? So these are all the kind of empires that are a bit like us. They got money, but maybe you thought it's just the 1200s. Let's go back to the previous Air era. And some people were wondering, okay, how long did it take from the moment the Air era started until the Song Dynasty collapsed? Okay, if you measure from there, it was 53 years. 53 years, that's how long it took. Okay, and right now, we are already 5 years into our Air era. Okay, let's go further back into the previous cycle. Now, the previous time there was an Earth to Air was because it was every 800 years it gets there. And the next one, so that's the box, right? Next one is the Roman Empire. Again, like us, very rich, right? With a lot of trade around, with a strong military, and of course, basically the richest and the most advanced. So Rome turns Christian during that time, not really because he really did hallelujah, but I think it's for political reasons. Go do your history, you will know. Okay, and then they started to have the end of their military dominance, because that's similar to how the US lost the Vietnam War. And then they lost the Afghan War. So basically the narrative goes on. Everyone thinks, oh, Roman army very strong. But actually, if you think about it, they lost kind of almost every war since the Vietnam War, right? And then Rome splits into two, East and West Rome. And then during this entire period, famine happens. They starve around the time. And they got so weak that all the small tribes around them start to attack them. Okay, so they got sacked multiple times. And eventually, Rome falls. Okay, so the other question here is, let's ask that same question. How long did it take from the moment the Air era started to the moment they fell? It was actually 24 years. We are 5 years into the Air era. So assuming that the same thing happens to us in the same time scale, then we should expect the empire to fall in 2043. Right? My math's correct, right? And in those days, right, they don't have WhatsApp. They don't have live streaming. And they don't have AI. They fought the war on horseback, guys. You know what I mean? It takes weeks to get from one place to another. That's how long it took, okay? 24 years, okay? So I just want to make this something that hits people, right? And so we want to think about what are some of the characteristics, okay? And I started to find this pattern many years ago because the Earth Empire, the Earth eras, by the way, are characterized by empires that like to build monuments. So the Colosseum, and some of you may be thinking, yeah, but other eras also got built, not like the Earth era. So these people, they don't build buildings that have a real function to them. If you think about what is that Colosseum, what are all the pagodas in the Song Dynasty and the Angkor Wat, it doesn't actually really serve a functional purpose except to hao lian to everybody that we are so rich. No, I'm serious. You think about it, right? What's the purpose of all these buildings? I mean, yes, the Colosseum was a entertainment venue, but you know, it's like build first, then we find a use for it, like, you know what I mean? And then you want to think about, are you in a country, because some of you here from different countries, right? Do you live in a country where it's like a good idea to build like a big thing, right? Just for no particular purpose at all. You go and think about it, okay? And another thing is that in the Earth era, you had empires that connected commerce with government. So don't get me wrong, trade happens in every era. People will go to the market, they will buy and sell. This happens to every era. But only in the Earth era, it is connected to government and policy. So basically, it's like the government will negotiate and then you all go and like follow the thing, right? So it happened in Roman Empire, Song Dynasty, Khmer Empire, all same. And they also had a very, very strong banking industry. So money exists in all the eras, but only in the Earth era, you have the very, very sophisticated banking system. You have things like a stock market system. People are trading on indexes, and you get a loan system. And honestly, this is what made them so rich, because it meant that people had access to capital, people had access to loans. But the problem is always the same. Eventually, the money is so easy, they just keep printing it until they basically get hyperinflation, until nobody's money is worth anything, and then it just collapses. How many times do we need to do this, guys? It's happened again and again. So I'm going to show you some of the other characteristics that are very consistent, and I will prove it to you, okay? Now, first of all, that these people, the ones who don't make it, basically they collapse and die during the era is because they lose wars. And some people will say, hey, mate, I mean, every era also they die because they lose war, right? I get it. And you might say, but then, Earth era also got war. We got World War I and World War II, right? But let me show you what's very different, okay? You know how Hitler invaded Austria, right? And then that went on for a few years. And then the war ended, isn't it? Now, first of all, the war was quite short, if you think about it. World War II was like, 4.5 years? You know the Ukraine war, how many years already, Anybody think it's going to end anytime soon? So basically, the thing is, first, the wars were shorter in the Earth era. And did you realize that he invaded Austria, Poland, and what happened after the war? They gave back the country. Then you got Austria back again. Now, Singapore and Malaysia were invaded by the Japanese. 3 years, 8 months, right? And then what happened when the war ended? They gave you back your country, right? Then we continue, Last time Earth era, that's the pattern. Because people don't take your country forever. That doesn't happen in the air era. You lose, you lose. There is no take back. Don't have come back already. Right? So does anybody imagine that right now if Ukraine loses, that at some point Ukraine say, then Putin will say, okay, never mind, I give you back. Not happening, guys. Not happening, okay? So which is why with all the wars happening here, one of the things that you will see in the air era is that when some people lose wars, they disappear off the map. Don't have this place anymore. Okay, and another thing is that technology and talent go where money is. Now, in the Song Dynasty, they were known for inventing gunpowder, which is fantastic because when the Mongolians are coming, you want to use it as a weapon against them. But you know they didn't do that. You know what they do with the gunpowder? All the rich people use it to make fireworks. To hao lian to everybody, I'm very rich lah, I can have fireworks. And if you think about it now, if you're an average person who is smart enough to make fireworks, now you think about it, do you go and develop it as a weapon? Or do you go and help the rich man to hao lian to his friends? And let me tell you what people do in the Earth era. They will go with the rich man. You know why? Money lah. The guy can pay what? Right? You make him look good in front of his friends, he will pay you top dollar. Why did nobody bother to go and solve the problem? Now, if you think about what happened in our world, is that most of the smart people, they join banking. They join investments. Why? Money lah. Right? And of course, now the new one is tech. And you want to join the big tech bros because that's where the money is now. But let me tell you what people are not doing. Nobody is solving the rising sea level. Nobody is developing solar power. So if you people run out of electricity at some point, you know why? All the rich people, all the smart people went to kiss the rich guy's ass, right? And then nobody is actually doing what is useful for the survival of their civilization. Guys, that's how you die. You know what I mean? And so basically you see like all the money's been sunk into certain types of industries, and I purposely picked this because, I mean, is the VR thing going to save any of us from anything, really? But you know how many smart people are there? You know why? Money. Right? And so that becomes something that will kill your empire. You find that your empire fragments, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. The obvious one here is the German election just happened, and this was quite scary because it shows you that the Berlin Wall has come down, but then the mindset is still separate. And this is happening in several countries, and which is why I say when you have interregnum, where you have all the kings fighting each other, now this is how you can get it. And these are the early signs. And we also have Europe basically being very anti-immigrant, but not just Europe, let's be honest here, right? Everywhere also, even here in Singapore. Okay, and one more thing is that the Earth empires who died are the ones who spent all their resources trying to fix the Earth era status quo. So every time like a supply chain goes down, oh, our port got bombed, okay, then we have to go and save all the jobs. And if you look at examples here, Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the UK, has this month, he's trying to save the factories that are crushed by fuel prices. Last month, he was trying to save UK Steel. And you know, I follow politics very, very, very closely. Every month, he got something Earth era to save. So far, he has not been very successful. Okay, and basically, that's what the Prime Minister is spending his time on. And you also get Thailand trying to revive an automotive industry. Is it not obvious to everybody here that like driving cars is a bit of a not very good idea nowadays, really? Okay, and now, another thing I mentioned about the fertility thing, right? So basically, when fertility is down, food production is down. And the ones who don't make it are when food, trade, and water production disrupted by wars or climate crises. I don't want to say so much about that. And also, you find that in the Earth era, this is very consistent. Now, I found that in Rome and in the Song dynasty, the tendency was they had a religion, but they were not very serious about their religion. In fact, they joined their religion just to hang out with the money. It's a way to make money. And in fact, the real religion is money during the Earth era. And the next slide, I took it off a website from a religious institution. I will not mention what religion, you make your own conclusion. And I was a bit shocked to see this. Okay? It says here, have faith in the power of religious network. And a religious congregation is a great place to establish a rapport with those in a position to offer a career stepping stone. Okay? I think some people can see the irony here. And this is what I mean by, in the Earth era, people didn't really do things because they believed in it. They did it because there was a financial benefit for that person. Okay? And the last one here is that Earth era governments are characterized by being rigid, elitist, and hierarchical. And if you look at, I'm not just criticizing our government. You look at all the Earth era governments in our world, they were all like that. If they were not like that, they collapsed by now already, right? So they're all like that. Look at Germany, look at France, they're all the same. Okay, and what is the biggest problem is that, first of all, is that in the air era, things move very quickly. And let me tell you a true story. The Song dynasty, when the news came that the Mongolians were coming, you know what they did? They all went to the emperor's palace and they were like, Huangdi, what do we do? And then they discuss it. The Mongolians are riding into your city, they're still discussing. So that's one of the problems with democracy is that in all the democracies in the world, there's a parliament and they take like 6 months to decide whether they want to do something or not. Right? And that's another reason why I'm recommending that for those of you who work in very, very large organizations, am I correct in describing your organization as being a Titanic? That see the iceberg there and still cannot turn on time because you need to submit a proposal and the boss and the boss and the boss above, by the time come back to you, if it's approved, it's like 3-6 months later. Air era cannot play like this, you know. Okay, confirm die. Okay, so this is how you see this one collapsing. Now, on top of that, you will also see one other problem with the Song dynasty is that, and Roman Empire too, they got army. The problem is, when the problem happened, the army is guarding the rich guy's house. You know what I'm saying? So basically, the army is not protecting the people, they're protecting the rich guy. And I show you some proof, okay? So Mark Zuckerberg has a 5,000 square feet underground bunker in a private island in Hawaii. He calls it just a little shelter. And when Sam Altman is the boss of OpenAI, who runs ChatGPT. And someone asked him about a dystopian future. What if the AI take over, then it all die? He said, I try not to think about it too much because I have guns, gold, potassium iodide, blah, 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 and a big patch of land in Big Sur I can fly to. So just so you know, he got his plan B ready. Not sure about your plan B. Okay, and that's his real answer. Like, seriously, I found this online. Okay, so now let's go on to the third part, which is my forecast. Okay, and let me get into it. Let's start, of course, with the big one. Okay, so let's start with the US. Obviously, no one is expecting good news. I'm not going to say anything new for the traders who are here, because I'm sure you've heard about the budget deficit. I'm sure you've heard about the $37 trillion debt that they have. And so here's the article. So it says that they are hurtling towards an August debt crisis. We are June now. So if in 2 months' time, again, I'm not an expert in finance, I do research one. Okay, so basically in August, they need to, there's something that they need to pay up. If they don't pay up, then they're in trouble. Now, my understanding, based on what I found out, is that there are really only 3 things that they can do. Okay, one is to allow the inflation to rise, which I'm sure you've heard. The inflation is pretty scary in the US right now. Now, the second is something called austerity, which means they have to reduce their spending because they spend too much money. But I'm sure you've all heard that Elon Musk was supposed to reduce the government spending, right? He managed to reduce it by about $400 billion. And let me contextualize it for you. That's about 10 days worth of interest. You know, when you borrow money, you got to pay interest, right? What he managed to reduce is about 10 days worth of interest. That was all he managed to do. Okay? And the third one is to default. Basically, I owe you money, I don't pay. Okay, so that is essentially it. Okay, let's start here. Now, for the whole of this year, America has had a very, very hard time. The Americans have been paying the price. Since April this year, we had this. So the households at the roots were getting affected, and this is more than just money. So basically, you had people who were deported, people whose families were torn apart because some people were not like fully American. And also, I also wrote here home defaults, because the fourth house here is for property and home. So as people start to, interest rates goes up, some people cannot afford to pay their loans already. Now, when it comes to October to December this year, coming up very soon, what I see here is that Mercury is hanging out in the 12th house, and that tells me it's decision-making that is self-destructive in nature. And it's hitting the people. And in America's chart, you see, America is different from other countries. The people in America and their financial health is essentially the financial health of like every single person on earth, right? Because of the nature of the fact that they are the reserve currency. And so basically, we're expecting some very bad decision-making in October and December. And some of the people who are more financially trained will say, but May, I thought we were looking for a decision in August. And if they don't get it, then surely the markets will go into trouble. But I'll tell you one thing, I don't see a big decision in August. I don't. All I see is people dragging the conversation. So then you get people coming out with like bright new ideas. Maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. And maybe it drags the conversation out a bit. And sometimes some things you drag, the longer you drag, the worse it gets. So just for context for the people here who are not so financially trained, the interest that they pay every day is $3 billion. Okay, so I was shocked when I heard this. So every day they pay $3 billion in interest. So not even paying it down. Now, then what I also see that there are signs of absorbing responsibility. Okay, so this is not new. A lot of people are expecting Trump is not known for responsibility. In November, there are indications that Jupiter is in the 8th house. It tells me there's lawmaking to do with taxes and currencies and markets. And also, it tells me that he's looking for an easy solution, the one with the least pain to him. Okay? And so that's between you run from December to March, and you want to take note of this particular date, is that what I suspect, okay, I'm not financially trained, but what I suspect is that he's going to come up with some kind of policy that will jumpstart the industries. And the reason is because Uranus is hanging out in the 6th house, and it tells me, and this makes sense because he set the tariffs, and it means that he wants to jumpstart things like automotive, factories, and the whole idea is that it will generate growth, right? And that it will somehow pay their debt, which if you do the maths, it doesn't work out. And so he will do that, and it seems that there are a lot of sudden decisions that actually causes a lot of chaos in administration and services. Now, chaos can include all sorts of things, but here's just a little sneak preview of how they fired all the people in their CDC panel experts. And I would not want to be in the US if COVID happens today, because not a single person on that panel is actually trained to take care of a pandemic. He fired all the people who are trained to look after pandemics. And I don't know how to couch this, but if you have friends or family who are still in the US, it might be a good idea to get out of there. Really, like not kidding, like really, okay? Okay, then financial foundations will erode next year. The whole of next year, this will not surprise most people, it's going to be a very bad recession. First of all, February to March, you will see this date over and over again today. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. There's going to be incoherent communication because Mercury is in the 3rd house. And what this means, and this is not new to Trump. So basically, you have 4 or 5 people all saying different things at the same time. So they all hold like different press conference. Then one person say 4%, another person say 6%, and then everybody is confused because it's like, so is it 4 or 6? And no one knows. Like literally no one knows. And then you could have things like maybe he signed a bill to cancel something, and then he make a press conference and say, oh no, we are going to continue. And then basically so basically you have the rest of the world going like, okay, wait, so is this on or is not on? Right? And this is a strategy that he's doing. Right? The whole idea is to confuse people because then if you don't know what number is it, you don't know when is it. And right now, basically, he tell you on what day he will make a decision and it never happens. Have you all realized? And so the problem here is that as he starts to bring that even further, and what is starting to affect is Neptune up here. So it tells me that even the laws, and 9th house is also for things like that are international in nature. So that means he will simply remain non-committal on just about everything. And this is a very big problem because a lot of things are waiting for his decision. And once he doesn't decide, it's going to put a lot of countries in a very difficult bind because you cannot move forward. Now, between March, and you notice that's January 2028, so that's a very long time. It's like a 2-year plus period. Not surprising, right? They're going to get into recession because all the industries that he say he want to pump money into, it's not going to work. So basically, it's not going to make money because, first of all, the technology, the people who for making cars, they're not there in the US now. You can't just revive it. So it's not going to make money. Household wealth is going to get even worse. And if I'm correct, and it's possible that he might end up doing a bit of quantitative easing, and that means that the inflation might go up. And this time around, if it really does go up, it could potentially go out of control. Basically, the people in the US are going to have a very, very, very hard time. And also, Congress becomes powerless. So basically, every day you read the newspaper, why is nobody stopping him? But nobody can. Okay, so that is just going to continue all the way throughout 2026, 2027. Okay, so, but Scott Besson says the US will never default. So you decide lah. I told you the newspaper will say different things from what I say lah. Okay, so of course, if we talk about the US run into problems, then there are a few countries that are very exposed to US trade. And one on my list is Switzerland. Now, as a Singaporean, I always think of Switzerland as being this very advanced country, but apparently I was not so accurate. Their 70% of their GDP is for goods that are being exported. But their goods are high-class goods, right? So basically, cheese, chocolate, and precision tools, including things like luxury watches, okay? And but if you think about it, who can afford to buy this stuff? Not the typical African guy, maybe the rich China guy, but most of it goes to the US. And what this means is that when the tariff came up, Switzerland is in trouble. So Reuters actually estimated when the tariff came out that nearly half of all Swiss companies are going to be hit by the US tariffs. And then, basically, their economy is very, very Earth era. So in March, around that March period when the tariff came up, their economy came at risk. And so it meant that for the period of 2025 and 2026, the whole economy is basically on tenterhooks. And then around now, between June to in fact April next year, the government will try to make them follow rules, but the banks have decided that no, I will do it my way. I know better than you. And this is not a pattern that you will only see in Switzerland. There will be many other banks that are like that. So, and then in December to January, which is like I said, if you recall, this is the period that I said the US is making some disastrous decisions. And what it tells me is that their authorities are on high alert. Okay, so when it's on high alert, it means that sometimes when you took a very big risk, and you know how in the olden days you got all the stockbrokers sitting at the teletext there, right, clicking the thing as oh shit, the number is 1. And that's what you're going to see. The Swiss bankers are going to be like on tenterhooks. So here's the background. that the Swiss finance minister calls that the US debt is a ticking time bomb. And recently, the government says that you need to have a capital reserve, which means you need to secure your banks, your assets. UBS says, we know better than you, we don't have to do that. Okay, so basically right now they're clashing. This article was of June 1st. I'm not really sure what the outcome is right now, but the banks don't feel like the rules apply to them. So which means when the US starts to misbehave, the Swiss financial sector may collapse. And look at all those red lines there, and it involves things like the secure base. There will be an eclipse onto their base. This means, for Switzerland, base doesn't just mean real estate. Because their base, don't forget, includes a lot of very rich people who put their money there too. That's how they make their money. And this is global. It's not just Swiss. Okay, and if you look at all those words there, investment, risk, wealth, rich people, that's who's getting affected. Okay, and February to March, again, that same date. And in fact, I didn't put all the lines there because otherwise it would be too cluttered, but there are five astrological indicators involving money and wealth that they are all hitting Switzerland at the same time. And I want to say here is that if you recall in 2023, Credit Suisse collapsed. And UBS is even bigger than Credit Suisse, okay, by a lot. So what I think is a likely trigger, so I'm not saying necessarily that the US definitely will default, because what I see from the charts is that it's not clear whether what he's actually doing. So that's something we have not seen before. Right, so basically it's like if you default, okay, then we can deal with it. But then if you cannot, the world can't really tell whether you do, don't do. And in fact, what happens is probably a panic flight of people with money. Okay, they're going to get out of there because Switzerland is not ready for this. And of course, if I'm going to talk about Switzerland, I have to cover Japan. Okay, and for the people who are in the know, because I'm not, okay, but based on my research, Japan's situation is even worse than the US. So it's like Japan's debt right now is 261% of their GDP. And that means that it's like cannot pay back one, okay? And the thing is, Japan is a very complicated industry because it doesn't just affect themselves. Again, I'm just showing you all what I managed to learn. There are many traders who trade using the Japanese yen, mainly because of the low interest rates. So basically, even if they are not investing in Japan itself, basically if Japan has like weird things happening, it's going to affect global trade. So what's the news that's been happening so far the entire year is that every time you see newspaper, you can see they have some minister or whatever is like going somewhere, usually to the White House, to negotiate on the tariff issue. Now, some people may not know that actually the tariff thing is not new for Japan. That means last year, they already kena a bunch of tariffs, including for their cars. For Toyota, Nissan, and what's the other one? Honda, right? And they already kena, and then this year they got even more tariffs, okay? So what happened is that this year they are desperate for an agreement. So from April onwards, basically, there's a lot of threats. A lot of their agreements have come up, and their people are not meeting their obligations. From March onwards, that's when the tariff hit. And then, of course, you saw the leaders are basically doing just about nothing else in Japan, apart from trying to get some kind of agreement from the US. From June to August, which is around now, the economy is going to slide, and a lot of the existing trade agreements cannot continue. So again, I'm not financially trained, but what this also means is that sometimes it can potentially mean that it may not be the US who defaults, because there's a possibility also, from my understanding, that it could be Japan that defaults, because their debt situation is much worse than the US. And also, what it shows here is that they might actually get offers during this time, but you know Japanese pride. So even if it's being offered to them, they may not accept it, because they will just feel like this is an insult to us. So so you should expect financial losses. And another thing is that their currency is very likely to devalue. And I know that I'm speaking to an auditorium full of Singaporeans. Sometimes we are a bit evil, right? Then you see their currency go down. Then your first thought is, I want a holiday in Japan. I know, you buggers, right? Okay, but truth be told, right? This currency devaluation can be really bad. And it's and right now, I don't think anybody wants to commit to how bad it can be. But remember, I said that in the Earth era, you know how last time, right? If your country is like Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe, and then you start printing $1 trillion notes, right? you know how the IMF shows up and then it's like everybody just sort of agree that, okay, never mind, they'll be screwed up, but then we just be nice to them or something, right? And then you get to keep your country. But remember I said in the air era, sometimes countries can potentially disappear, okay? And I'm not saying Japan will, but I'm basically saying that when you see things like that happen in our era, don't assume the country will still be there, okay? So Japan has started selling off bonds. It's a warning because then it seems that investors don't really believe that Japan is going to hold on. Their prime minister is basically saying that their financial condition worse than Greece. Okay, so the time bomb will destabilize, and the timing is here. So between February to June of next year, the indicators are clear. Pluto's in the first house. It will square Chiron in the ninth. My interpretation here is that there is what I call an international abandonment. So especially if a lot of the international investors start to abandon Japan, and this can also mean abandoning the Japanese yen. That's one possibility. Okay, so the destabilization is there. I also expect that there's also like very unclear, confused decision making when it comes to finances. It will affect the investors, but I think even more scary is that the people of Japan are going to suffer very badly because their currency is going to devalue very quickly. From April onwards, they do recover, but it is very, very slow. Now, at this point, I want to show you something that is a bright light here. Because already, for a number of years now, there have been a lot of young people who have been criticizing this idea of old man economics. And in fact, Japan is very known for their entire cabinet looks like, I don't know, like some nursing home, right? And everyone knows, right? Everyone knows. And it's like, it's like the problem here is that the culture itself does not really believe in handing down to the younger people. And that is also curbing a lot of their technology advances. I think it's quite well known that despite all their robotics and whatever, the truth is a lot of companies are desperately behind in technology. A lot of my clients tell me, you go to Japan, you're like, oh my God, USB drive. It's like, what are you still using, right? But the truth here is that, here's the nice thing, from April onwards, because they screw up so badly, then the criticism will go up. So basically, young people are going to start complaining and say, I think all these old men need to get off here because they don't seem to be doing the right things. They are doing the things that might have worked in the Earth era. It doesn't work in the Air era. So when the criticism gets strong enough, there is a possibility that we could, like cross fingers, actually see a renewal in Japan. Sometimes things need to go really bottom before people will start making a change. And so basically, this is something I got earlier this year. And there's a rice crisis. It says here that they are releasing strategic reserves. You all know what reserves are, right? It means that only when very bad things happen, people are very poor, got no money to eat, then the government take out the rice and feed the poor people. And already in April, they started taking reserves out, you know. And the problem hasn't even happened yet. So who thinks that maybe the reserves aren't going to make it? Right? So which is why the situation in Japan is not funny. Right? It's like you might like to go there and holiday, but the people there might starve to death. Okay, so that's the truth. Okay, but something I want to share here is that don't forget that my forecast is only a 2-year period, yeah? And we have to think a bit broader about this earth to air thing. Now, there's something about Japan, right, that if you really think about it, in terms of being like absolutely materialistic, there's something about Japan that is actually not that materialistic compared to like China or like South Korea or even Singapore. There's something about them that if it means maintaining their sushi versus like making $1 million, have you realized that the Japanese chef is like, if you tell him, hey, your restaurant, if you expand by 3 times, can have more customer, right? He said, no, I maintain. My restaurant, 12 people, that's it. Right? You know what I mean? So there's something about the Japanese culture that is just not that materialistic. And for that reason, their chances of surviving is just a little bit higher than most people because then their culture has an air era mentality. Now, another thing about Japan is they've been around for a very long time, like thousands of years, right? They have kena the tsunami. It came and swept them and they're still there. Then the nuclear plant exploded, killed a lot of people, then they're still there. Then some years ago, they kena atomic bomb, not 1 or 2. Nobody else kena, they're still there, you know what I mean? So there's something about Japan that they're a bit unkillable cockroach. And you know, their whole history is filled of shogun wars, the samurai, like, you know, self-ending, that kind of stuff, right? And another thing is that Japan is a very strange country. While they are like hopelessly backward in some ways, but they're also leaders. in certain areas of space technology. They're also leaders in things like nuclear technology. They've been in it like way before most people have actually. And in terms of robotics, they are much more creative because Japanese people are a bit crazy one, you know what I mean? Like the kind of ideas they come up with is a bit insane, but you can't say they're not experimental. So at least on that level, there's something about their culture that actually fits extremely well with the air era. And for that reason, I'm basically saying that they are going to recover. It will take them a very long time, but they are going to do well in the air era. My charts show that they will do well, just that it's not within the scope of today's forecast. Okay, but maybe I wouldn't invest in them for the time being. Okay, and of course I can't say the same about their neighbor, South Korea. Now, one of the things that is important in the air era is making friends. You want to have connections and networks, and Korea has done that, but they don't make very good friends. Because then their friend is Japan and US. I can see my friend there laughing away already. Okay, so unfortunately, sometimes in this interconnected economy, this happens. So South Korea has problematic friends. Now, next year, so that's the period that I say that a lot of these collapses will happen. So what I see here is that the friends situation, be it Japan or US, I can't tell from the chart, but it starts to create, the uncertainty basically goes and affects the market, February to April. And I also see that between April to December of next year, the difficulties will come up. So basically, and it's a very big problem because South Korea is a very weird country. It's quite big, but everybody squeezed into Seoul. Basically, if you go out of Seoul, like everywhere else is like very, very old people and very, very poor people, right? And the problem is that they all try to work for a few companies. It's almost like everybody trying to work for Samsung, if you know what I mean, right? And the problem is that most of the products and the trade deals they're mostly in Japan and the US, including like supplies and things like that. So the effect is quite bad for South Korea. And the problem here is that South Korea, if you think about it, they're quite angry now already. Did you all see the newspapers? They kind of did some stuff to their president, right? And yeah, so basically if they are already angry, you don't go and take away their job and don't make them poor. Okay, so South Koreans are not known for good temper. And basically they become very angry. Look at all those lines there. First of all, between May and August next year, after the bad things happen, more bad things happen because their parliament is soft, it is stuck. I know the guy now crowdsourcing his cabinet. I mean, good move, but that's provided you can solve the problem. I'm not sure anyone can solve this problem, really. Okay, and also by around the middle of the year, people will start expressing their insecurity. Lots of people are like really majorly cowpaying about the situation, and you get very, very angry young people. Now, what South Korea already has one, as of this moment, haven't crashed yet. They already have one of the highest youth unemployment. If you watch any documentary, you'll see people with 3 jobs and like basically they are renting a storeroom, basically. And the reality is, these are angry young people. You do not want to piss them off. So the people are very angry. They are going to gather themselves. And I want to share one more thing. And quite a lot of people here are my students. Look at what's there. Okay, so when anything that's on the ascendant means is the physical experience of what happens in the world. You got Uranus and Mars hanging around that at the same time. That happens around July, August of next year. Okay, so basically, it builds up. People get angry, and then before you know it, one person does something stupid, and then like funny things happen in the street. Okay, so maybe don't holiday in Seoul during that period. Okay, yeah. And one other thing I want to say is like, although I ended with the Japanese story slightly more positive, I cannot say the same for South Korea. They are among one of the most materialistic societies in the world. They are obsessed about branded things and wealth and fame and K-pop stars and whatever. And most of that is crumbling already. And you know, when I was creating this slide, right, I was like, honestly, I have no idea who these people are, okay? But then I look at their face, then they all look like the same face, you know? But you know, it's a South Korean thing, right? Basically, there's not a lot of authenticity there anymore. And that's a problem with their culture, and it's not the same for Japan. Japan will stand for their culture, these guys will not. And for that reason, South Korea, beyond the scope of my forecast, things don't look fantastic for South Korea, okay? India and Pakistan. Okay, so these two have been hitting the news because they've been trading blows with each other. And I want to tell you something about India and Pakistan, okay? And it's astrological and it's historical also. And you know, at one point, the British ruled that area, right? And then when the British came out, they basically gave independence to these two countries. And what they did was they drew a line. They said, okay, all the Hindus here, all the Muslim here, then they draw one line, then they say one side India, one side Pakistan. And so the weird thing is that this will interest my students. The birth charts of India and Pakistan is actually at the same time. They actually have the same birth time because the day they draw the line and say 2 countries, right? Same birth time. Now the difference is that the 2 countries have different capital. So basically one is in New Delhi and then the other one is wherever, right? And then, so basically, when you do the charts, it is almost identical with minor differences between the 2 charts. And what this means is that every time that chart gets hit, then basically, this is why these 2 countries have so many skirmishes with each other. Because these things happen a lot. So what I'm showing you on this screen, let's start with Pakistan's chart. And this portion here, where you see so many planets all squished together, and they are all getting affected by this Mercury within a very short time. Now, in Pakistan's chart, all of this is actually in the 4th house. So it tells me the homeland, the roots, the people are getting affected, okay? So this here is June to August, and what we see is that this is a contentious period. And what I saw was that because it's Leo, right, I know that there's a lot of pride involved. There's a lot of like loud noises and fancy things, right? And I cannot say I'm an expert in India and Pakistan, so I had to do some research, right? Especially I had the time period. So what I found was that during this period, they will celebrate this thing called Ashura. Okay, I'm telling you what my research says. Ashura is a Muslim sort of like a festival. And different denominations of Muslims celebrate it slightly differently. Okay, and so this becomes a bit of an issue because Pakistan is mostly Muslim, but India has an issue where majority of them are Hindus, but they kind of have a significant Muslim population and they have not been getting along. So that's one contentious period. Plus the 14th of August is their Independence Day for both countries. So both countries are celebrating their Independence Day 1 day apart from each other. And basically, what the charts tell me is that India is likely to be a bit provocative. Now, do I think that they are going to send missiles in? I don't think so. But provocation can be, people want to have the celebration, then you say, oh, here cannot have celebration. You know, just pissing people off, you know what I mean? And then you put on something on the newspaper, you criticize people's festival, and then you start to get people not happy with each other already. Okay, and so I find that the issues are very likely to take place at the Pakistani border or in their lands because of how it happens here in Pakistan. Now let me show you India's chart. Now they have a very similar chart. So my students will know actually it's the same chart, just that, you know, it's a bit rotated lah. So India has the same stellium, but it is not in the 4th house, it is in the 3rd. So now, one of the keywords for the 3rd house is neighbor. So for a country, the neighbor is the neighboring country. I'm not showing on my chart here, but basically for Pakistan, it is a home ground thing. For India, it is a neighbor thing. Okay, got it? Same chart, but different story. Okay, and then you have August to October, that's happening this year, that this thing happens. Okay, so Uranus is a naughty boy. And it tells me that India is provocative. They're like poking people, trying to get a response, right? And which means the speed of events can happen very quickly. And if I'm correct that if India is like purposely saying things just to like, you know, poke people, things can escalate. Then between October to December, now keep in mind, this is the period that the US is starting to talk rubbish around this time, okay? And they are making some decisions that can affect things. But what I see here is that India is likely to get involved in toxic rhetoric. So if they are trying to say things, and sometimes, you know, if you know that the policeman is not going to come, right, then you can say whatever you want, right? Because, you know, the policeman got other things to be concerned about. And also, the government is ineffective. I say here ineffective, but sometimes it's because they pretend they never see, right? Because there are other reasons why the government might allow people to get out of hand, like purposely allow them to get out of hand. And I do see that around October, December is when there are a lot of disputes going on, okay? And because all the neighbor stuff is happening, I suspect that there's some disputes that's happening. Now, do I think that they are going to fight in terms of sending missiles? Not necessarily. Disputes got many types. And I want to show you what happens to Pakistan next year, and this one is important. You may not care about Pakistan, but this thing will show you something that is a characteristic of the era. Now, at some point, Pakistan has no cards left. Some of you may not know this, but Pakistan has been bankrupt, like a bankrupt thing, right? So basically, the IMF has been there trying to sweep up the mess. But you see, the problem is that that's April to December, okay? So the foreign aid from the West dries up. Here's what I see. So the 11th house is friend. Then the Saturn squaring the Uranus there tells me that the friend money The money that come from friend, not there anymore. You all know what happened, right? USAID was cancelled. Right, so Elon Musk cancelled that. So basically, poor countries, this is one of the countries that got affected. So basically, the money not coming. Now, another thing that happened is that this is the period where some of the world crises starts to show up. Right, I talked about Japan, I talked about South Korea. So there are other countries that need the IMF right now. So you know, it's like the ICU at the hospital, right? Suddenly, all the people coming out cannot breathe, you know what I mean? And you know how the last priority is the one that almost dying already? It's like if you are really almost, like you really dying already, then they will save the people that we maybe can save. So the cannot save one, you last priority already. So any kind of flexibility, it basically ends by March 2026, Pakistan really got no more cards left. No friend and no cards left and no money. So what I see is for the rest of 2026 and the whole of 2027, now Pluto is crossing the mid-heaven. Now Pluto is the god of death, and the mid-heaven at the top is basically their government. And basically Pakistan is going to be in crisis, a very bad one. So what I see here is that it's actually affecting their services. So it's not always a direct monetary thing, but what I see here is that, you know how I said that in the air era when you're broke and you got nothing, right? Then you have to kneel to the next door guy and hope that he save you. And I'm going to show you something, okay? Now this is a map of the rivers that are between India and Pakistan. And you will see that the white color side is Pakistan, the grey color side is India. There is a very important river called the Indus River that flows through Pakistan. Unfortunately, all the tributaries flow from India. And it comes from the mountains in India. And let me also show you something very concerning. Now this is a hydroelectric dam, a major one in Pakistan. And here's the... So basically Pakistan is approaching a dead water situation. Okay, so the jury is out. Is it climate change? No rain? Maybe. Or it could be the neighbor next door is not being very friendly. You know how when you try and steal people's internet, right, then they cut the internet, then you got no more internet, right? So, but I mean, jokes aside, it's not funny because this is not just their drinking water. It is the water that powers their electricity. It is the water that irrigates their agricultural fields. Basically, it's a bit evil, if you ask me. Okay, so you're cutting off life supply from another country. Now, is India doing this? You decide. I just show you slide only. Okay, but and I didn't include Sri Lanka on that list, but my research tells me that recently Sri Lanka is also in a very bad shape. You all know, right? Last few years. And one of the things that they've done is that they've connected their electrical grid to India. Oh shit, yes. Right, so basically, when you are fully dependent on another country, now at this point, everybody still has their sovereignty. They still have their, but you know, at some point when this one don't have, that one don't have, then you have to go next door and knock on their door, then you might as well give up your surname lah. You know what I mean? If other people are feeding you, then they tell you to jump, you say how high, isn't it? Right, so that means in the air era, don't be surprised if some countries get wiped off the map. They might maintain their name, but it's like a ghost country, you know what I mean? It's like they sort of have a name, they have a government, but everyone knows the government is puppet lah, right? So sorry. Okay, let's talk about Russia. Now, the Russia story, of course, is connected with Ukraine, and I'm going to disappoint some people. I don't have any news still about Ukraine. No news means nothing is going to happen. Same thing continue lah. I don't see an end, sorry. Okay, so nobody in Ukraine thinks the war will end soon, so I got no update on Ukraine, but I'd like to draw your attention to a slightly different group of people who are right now, if you check your news feed, right, nobody is talking about this. This one is new. Okay, I want to draw your attention to the Baltic regions. Okay, so the Baltic regions, right now it says that it's preparing for war. Everybody is focused on Ukraine, so it's a distraction now. Let me show you why this might happen. Because recently, so there's a bit of Soviet history, okay? I'm a mini historian nowadays. Okay, so basically when the Soviet Union failed, you know all these other small countries, they all broke away from the Soviet Union, right? So the Baltic states are essentially Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Okay, so what happened at the time was that Russia did this thing called Russification. So there was a deportation. They take all the local people, they destroy them, send them to some faraway Siberia place, and then they replace them with a bunch of Russian people. So the idea is to affect the culture of the new country. They purposely put Russian people there. Now what has happened, this has been 30-something years already. So you imagine there's a portion of your population are not Latvian, they are actually Russian, and they have been quite uncooperative in the sense that they refuse to speak your language. So that means everybody speaks Latvian, and then this small group of people, they only speak Russian. So you want to engage them, you want to buy things from them, then you better speak Russian. So basically, they have not integrated into Latvian culture. So, but the thing is, Russia has been trying to keep all the little babies like close to Mother Russia, basically, right? But recently, all 3 Baltic states, very recently in February, March this year, they unplugged from their electricity grid. And then now they connect to the EU grid. And this is a very big thing because already they're NATO member already, right? And then on top of that, now you go and do this kind of thing. He angry. Okay, so let me show you the map here, just to get, in case some people here are not so familiar with this thing. Okay, you got Mother Russia, and then you got Baby Russia. Because what happened is that during the Soviet Union thing, when those 3 states broke away, somehow they left a small piece of Russia there. Okay, so this is real. Go and check your map. And then his best friend Belarus is there. Okay, so basically, right now, a lot of people think that the next target of Putin is going to be Lithuania, the one at the bottom. The reason is because they are hoping to reunite the baby with the Mother Russia. Okay, so that's the theory here. Okay, so all the attention is on Lithuania at the moment because now the ex-CIA chief is warning that Lithuania could be the next target. And in fact, in Lithuania, the preparation for war has begun. In fact, it began when the Ukraine war happened. Right, and my understanding right now is that the youth unemployment is a bit of a problem in those areas also. And I suppose if you are a young man, you got no job, might as well sign up for the army, right? Okay, so basically they are really preparing for war right now. Okay, so you know how your newspaper doesn't tell you this? Okay, and another thing is that in February, March, Russia and Belarus is planning to hold a joint military drill in September. Now, why is this important? It means that now Russia will have a legitimate reason to put troops in Belarus, right? So they put the troops there, then you cannot say anything because they announced beforehand, I'm doing military drill, right? And another thing that some people are not aware of is that when Ukraine got invaded, originally they said it was a military drill. So it was a drill that turned into an invasion. Basically, they did this before, exactly the same playbook. Okay, and which means that, of course, now if you are Lithuanian, you're quaking in your boots, right? Basically, all your soldiers are ready. In September, that will happen. So you guys want to watch your newspapers, okay? So, of course, what I did was I went to look at the chart of Lithuania. I want to determine, do I see them getting invaded in September? So what I see here is I'm only willing to commit to possible skirmishes. I don't see a full-fledged war, because between August to December, that's the period where the military thing is happening. I see that there are sudden actions from the enemy, yes, that they are fighting, so I see that. But the third house, can you see that the solid line there? But the third house is not your homeland. If your homeland is going to get invaded, I need to see the fourth house or the first house getting major transits, but none of that is happening. It's in the third house, and the third house is neighbor, not Lithuania, okay? And what I see here is that the Saturn is opposite the Moon, is across the 5-11 axis. This is called I support my friend. I support my friend, right? So, and in September, which is when we expect things to happen, there's an eclipse. There is something in the fourth house, Mercury is in the fourth, so it does happen. So maybe Lithuania might get a bit of action on their borders, but I don't know. I look at that and I cannot commit to a full-out war in Lithuania. Don't see it. So then the question is, okay, let's check the other 2 Baltic states. And I will skip Estonia, short version, not Estonia, okay? But let me show you what's happening on Latvia. Look at all those lines. Right? And they all lead to Saturn in the fourth house. Okay, now fourth house is home soil. So the thing is, right now, the expectation is that it's Lithuania that's going to get attacked. I don't know, I'm not a military person, I'm just the astrologer, okay? And it just looks like it is Latvia instead. Okay, so between August to December, that's when all those stuff is happening all at the same time, okay? All the astrological indicators, and it's happening there. But I also want to caveat here that those indicators don't look like all-out war. That means it doesn't look like missile go there, because most of the indicators there are fire signs and air signs. The air signs are very, very strong. And which is why it makes me think that is there another way to fight a war in the air era that we haven't really seen yet? And then from May next year onwards, it looks like there is internal opposition. So it looks like it's an internal fractured support. So what exactly is happening here? Now remember I told you that there's a bunch of their population that is Russian, and then they don't want to integrate. You know how many is it? 1/3. Almost 1/3 of their population don't want to fit in. Okay, and what happened is that when the Ukraine war happened, then there was a break between them. So the Latvians are like, we don't like Russian people anymore, right? And what happened also is that they started a program of language tests. So now they tell all the Russian people, you want to stay in Latvia, you take a language test, prove that you can speak our language, which of course most of them fail. If it fails, because they never speak the language. And of course, Latvians are very angry now because you've been here for 30 years, you didn't bother to learn our language, like what the hell, right? And so then they start deporting those people out. And of course, now you basically have a fragmentation in your country. And in fact, it says here 30% of the Latvian population are Russian speakers, and the government believes they could provide Vladimir Putin with a bridgehead into the country. What if 1/3 of your citizens don't support you? That's a very scary thing, okay? And I just want to take a very quick glance at Putin's chart. And here I got a caveat, okay? His birth chart accurate or not, I don't know. Most of his, I mean, I can tell you what I found, but he's capable of putting out a fake one, okay? So Putin connects with his people because between September, that's the military drill period, all the way until January next year, what I see is that he is a master of psychological communication. And it works very well with Moon in the 8th house. These are people who feel that they have been rejected. They are in a bad place. Okay? And he will also be seen by his people as fighting for the rights. We are Russian, we should fight for Russian people. And it's going to work quite well, actually. And what I see here is that by early next year, it's going to work so well that it becomes the motivation for a lot of people to step up. Okay? So, and from next year onwards, in May, you'll see that his emotional influence will grow. The idea of freedom, of like, we believe in our Russian ethnicity. And at this point, I want to remind everybody that you remember just now I said that one problem with the Earth era is that the tendency to worship money. That means they don't really have a religion, like they're just, you know. But the thing is, what I'm trying to show you here is that in the Air era, sometimes the belief doesn't have to be a religion. It just has to be, we are Russian, we stand for Russian. That's all. Right? Or, I'm Jewish, I don't stand for Palestinians. I'm Palestinian, I don't stand for Jewish. It's that simple. It's really that simple. So, in a sense, it doesn't have to be, because, in a sense, belief, my students here know, 9th house is not just religion, it can be culture as well. Whether you decide whether somebody belong or don't belong to your culture. Okay? And so I did my research because I was a bit skeptical. I'm like, really? I mean, he's doing some not very nice things, right? Surely the people don't really support him. And this research is done by Statista, so it's not I say and it's not some weird thing. Now, let's go back here. Now, in case you think that, if you ask, like, do you approve of Vladimir Putin? If you say the people are, even they don't approve, they are too scared to say, right? But if you look at the blue sections, there have been times where people were not shy to say that they don't support Putin. So there have been. But look at the April 2025. It's like almost, that's 87% approval rating. I think not very many heads of state got that kind of approval rating nowadays, you know. Yeah, so, okay, I have one last one. Yeah, let's talk about Thailand, okay. Thailand's very recently in the news. I didn't plan for that because actually my slides were prepared like almost 2 weeks in advance, right? So of course, recently now people are talking about whether the Prime Minister, her position is safe. There could be some challenges to her position. It's not on my slides, but there could be. Okay, but the main story I wanted to share, I'll show you what was my original presentation, is that Thailand got 36% tariff, and Thailand is an export country. Now, their financial system is on the brink, partially because for the past few years, their real estate market has been in a very bad situation. There are other things collapsing as well. So let me show you here that their money problem starts exacerbating this year, second half of the year, and let's see here. So first of all, that there are actually 5 indicators happening all at the same time for the second half of this year. The 12th house that you see, that combination there, covers quite a few things. It covers crime, it covers conspiracy, it covers monasteries, like monks in monasteries, it covers vice trades because it covers secrets. So what I see here is that there are also a lot of problems here with the financial issues. So there are losses. Basically, Thailand is not making money. They are hemorrhaging money at the moment. And also, Uranus here tells me that people are changing their attitudes towards things like crime, towards things like vice trades. Now, isn't that interesting? Because the Thailand I know is very Buddhist, and they are quite conservative in most ways. So Thailand household debt is really high at the moment. And this is just one of many cases, yeah? A lot of Thai monks have been arrested for various crimes nowadays. The kind of embezzlement here, some of them have been involved in human trafficking and that kind of stuff, right? So basically, it undermines, what I'm trying to show you here is that it undermines the faith of people, because Thailand people are very Buddhist. But when the leaders themselves, and some of these are very prominent religious leaders, and when the leaders themselves are doing not great things, that becomes a bit of a problem. Now recently, what happened is, I'm sure you've all seen, right? They tried to legalize cannabis. You all remember? And that was quite disastrous, right? Because then all the bad things came in also. And then recently, they also tried to move forward with casino. Because, I mean, maybe they saw it worked for Singapore, maybe they want to try also. But the people decided that they were quite conservative. They didn't want to introduce more of these gambling things into their market. But you see, now we have a problem, and they are looking for a solution here. Now, they need to tax the people. Now, there is one industry in Thailand that makes a lot of money, and it doesn't pay taxes because it's illegal, okay? And this is where. Now, there are actually calls to, like right now, to try and legalize the sex industry. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of iffy because they are a very conservative society, right? To imagine that they might make it legal is a bit crazy, but remember, it's air era. Okay, so basically priorities change. You know, when you're broke, right, and starving, then you don't complain so much. And the difference here is that they are not introducing a new casino. Who here doesn't know that the sex industry is major in Thailand? Right? It makes them billions of dollars, and it has for many, many years. So it's not like they're asking them to do more bad things. They already do bad things for very, very long already. Now the difference is now you better pay tax. Okay, and so basically, there are changes to Thai beliefs. So this happens gradually over a period of 3 years. But the first thing that I see here is that the sun, the progress sun, is in the second house. It tells me that the leader, the head of state, has got money problems. And it means that if you are comparing it to basically Jupiter in the 8th house, if you have beliefs about vice, basically you put that aside. Basically, pay bills more important. And the other thing also is that progress Venus is also an indication for vulnerable women. There have been quite a few high-profile cases of people not being treated very well. And in fact, there are activists who are basically saying, here's the irony, if you legalize the industry, then you can put rules to make sure that people get treated better. So at least that's the idea right now. So there is actually enough astrological indicators. I can tell you, I also half believe, half don't believe, whether or not they will actually do it. But my belief also is that when you're broke enough, some things you have to consider. I was telling my producer this, he said you are caught between a rock and a hard place sometimes. Okay, and so another thing that I think is a bit worrying is that, now this thing I just circled is the progress Mercury. Some of you know what this is. Now Mercury, when it moves backwards, now this happens sometimes in an astrology chart. And sometimes it means that the thinking doesn't go so well. Now Mercury is in Aries. Now this is a very fast-moving sign. And in the second house, it tells me it's a financial thinking. So it tells me Thailand is making short-term financial decisions. So when they desperately need money, if I legalize the sex industry, it means I can tax them. Unfortunately, right now we are in the air era. The thing is, for a country, you don't want Mercury to go retrograde at this point. You want it to go forward, not backwards. And what this tells me is this is pretty bad for long term. Right now, you want to develop AI, you want to develop space technology, you want to develop more of your trade, your trade, you want to educate your people. You don't want that Mercury, which is thinking, to go backwards. And the problem with the sex industry is there's not a lot of thinking required, right? Everyone understands what it's about, right? And so the problem right now is that it means that Thailand, and this thing, by the way, is going to be there for almost 30 over years. Okay? And that's enough to put a country back very, very, very far. And that makes me sad because I like Thailand. I really like Thailand, okay? And does it work? My chart says it does. It works. The business shows up. So between February to October next year, and the thing is, that's where the world goes a bit wonky, right? Basically, rich people are moving their money left, right, and center. And you know, there's some businesses, some industries are recession-proof, right? You all know, right? Like the whole world goes bad, but sex industry makes money always, right? And so what I see here is that the sleazy business contracts start showing up. And we've seen this happen in Thailand before when they tried to legalize cannabis. Basically, some very dubious people start showing up there trying to do business. So that happens. And also, I'm sad to say, the charts also suggest that the elites the people in charge in their country think that it's a good time to scrape a bit off the top. Okay, so basically when the money comes in, it's tempting, isn't it? And also, because if you start legalizing certain things, then you can, I'm sure there are business people here who understand what I mean. Certain activities, you can park it with the brothel. You can park it here and there. So basically, the smart Alex will start to find loopholes in their rules. And to me, this is, for me, it's a bit sad because I know Thailand to be a conservative, strongly Buddhist country. Something I respect about that. And what you start to see is that if you are Japan and you stand for your culture, you might make it. You have to pay the price, but you can make it in the era. But when you go back on the things that the people are supposed to stand for, then things don't work so well for them. Okay, so I also want to tell you that so far I've given you not great news, but there are empires that do well in the era, and I will cover that after the break. All right, let's continue, and I'm going to just keep to my promise. I said that I wouldn't just be giving bad news today, there's going to be some good news. I think for the people who have followed my webinars in the past, you might have heard the stories about the Song Dynasty and the Roman Empire before, but I promise you I've expanded my research. I've basically gone and looked at some of the other empires with a slightly better narrative. So for the people who have the Great Reorder playbook, you might want to refer to page 9 to 17, so that's where you can get more information about the eras. Okay, so just now, earlier, let's go back to that period of time where we had the 1200s. This was the Song Dynasty. And of course, when you get a dynasty that dies, you're going to need a dynasty that rises from here. So of course, the obvious one would be the Mongol Empire. It started out with Genghis Khan being born in the Earth era, and they got so strong that they conquered Beijing, Persia, and Central Asia. And the reason why this doesn't mean that China falls is because in those days, China was split into two. There was the Northern Song and the Southern Song. So the rich one was the Southern Song. And Beijing is in the north, right? So basically, Song Dynasty split into two, yeah? Earlier that. Now, around the time of the Air era, the Mongolians did something quite amazing. They invented the postal system. So what we think of as our SingPost or your DHL or whatever, the earliest version of it, one of the earliest versions was Genghis Khan and his army. Now, why is this postal relay system so important? Now, this is a relay system. And this means is that they don't just like go the whole distance, they like baton, pass baton. And this was a very major idea at the time. And if you think about how when you fight wars, now in those days, it took you weeks to get from one place to another. And what this meant was, if you have a postal relay system and the Song Dynasty didn't, it's like fighting a war with WhatsApp when the other guy is using email. You know what I mean? So basically, the information that they got, if you look at historical sources, it's amazing how quickly the Mongolian army knew where everything was. It's like having GPS almost. Okay, and then you also have that they eventually controlled Russia and also to sack Baghdad. And of course, after that, as the Song Dynasty went down, the Yuan Dynasty came up. So they become the next one, basically. Okay, let's going on. As the Roman Empire came down, here's what came up, and this is new content. Now you have the Gupta Empire. This was based in India that we know today. And Gupta Empire, by the way, is known as the golden age of India's history. In the Earth era, they did really well. They had this thing called the Iron Pillar. So that was amazing because they built this iron thing. This is way before you had like stainless steel, you know? And that iron pillar didn't rust for more than 1,600 years, so that's pretty amazing. Now, why was it that they did so well in the Air era was that they actually shifted their industries. So originally, they were like the Song Dynasty. They basically did a lot of like very money-based trade. And then they started taking an interest in mathematics. So they developed the decimal system. They discovered the zero. And they started investing in things like medicine. They were among the first people in history to do surgery. Okay, and then their last good king dies. So the funny thing is that Gupta Empire a bit mixed. So they have the Air era thing, but then they kind of got the politics wrong. So the last king dies, thereafter there's a lot of dispute, a lot of fragmentation. But throughout this entire period, they continued with their mathematical studies, their astronomical studies. And they were the first people to discover, for my benefit really, in my profession, that they discovered the Earth turned on its own axis. The Indians were the first to discover that. And then eventually, the empire did fall, but look at it, they lasted all the way until the end of the Air era. Not bad, lah. Some people don't make it to the end, okay? And there was another one that came up. Now, this was the Mayan civilization. some of you who know your history will know the Mayans actually lasted for almost 3,000 years, okay? So that means this period is like a tiny blip in their history, but this period is their golden age. So this was where they were the strongest. If you go to South America now and you see all those ruins that are there was like more than 2,000 years history came after this, and in fact, this was when they were at their peak. So what you saw was that, in fact, they've discovered zero even before the Indians did. The Mayans got there first. And then this was the absolute peak of their what they call the classic Mayan period. And throughout this entire period, they invested in advanced astronomy. They invented hieroglyphic writing. They invented the calendar system. You might have heard of the Mayan calendar that many people are still basing their mathematical calculations from. And also they had a massive trade network during this time. So the Mayans were so strong that at no point was their sovereignty ever questioned. At no point. Okay, and I'm going to give you a bit of bonus. Okay, so we go back another 800 years until we are in the BC period, before Christ already. And this we have the father of all eras, because we had ancient Greece. Okay, so how did that work? In the Earth era, they became the first known democracy that in our recorded history. Whether got any more democracy before, I don't know lah. Okay, but this was the first known one. And then this would be the equivalent of like their boomers. Basically, your Socrates and your Hippocrates was born. Okay, you had the boomers first, and then later on, a few years later, you had Plato. This would be like Gen X. You know how you have like, you know in AI, right, you had like the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs. That was the boomers, right? And then you got the Gen X, then you got the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos, right? So that's your Plato over there. And then you got the millennials coming around. So that's the Aristotle. In our world, it would be people like Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, right? These are the born 1980 something one. And then, now this one we haven't got yet because the Gen Z is still a bit young, so they haven't come up yet. But they also had a Gen Z called Alexander the Great. Now this guy happened to be their king. And in those days, kings don't hide in their palace when they get on horseback and they go out there and fight. Now this guy is a real warrior. And he's called Alexander the Great for a reason. He was 20 years old. So that's 20 years old. He started his conquest. Now he didn't last very long. He died at 32. But later on, I will show you a map, what he managed to conquer in 12 years. Pretty amazing for one guy on a horseback and an army. Okay, and throughout this entire period, just like the Gupta Empire, they invested a lot in maths and science and astronomy. Euclid's elements, some people here who have scientific background will know that a lot of the scientific studies that we do nowadays is actually based on some of the basic principles that was published by Euclid all those thousands of years ago. And throughout this entire period, they never stopped producing smart people like Archimedes, famous mathematician. So basically, these are just a smattering of things that you see. And there is, by now, you should start to see a pattern here. Okay, with all the empires that basically jibaboom during the Earth era, once they did well in the Earth era, they would go to Air era, they just died. And then there's the type of empire that seems to go on and on and on in the Air era, and somehow they make it. So I've also, again, compiled a series of characteristics of the empires that did well. I can tell you it's a bit of a set list because as you go along, you start to realize we're a bit far, okay? But and for those of you who are thinking about what you want to do for yourself in the Air era, this is the time where you can start making some notes, some good things that you might want to practice. Now, first of all, the Air era, if I'm being honest here, consists of a lot of gangsters. Okay, so first of all, you got Genghis Khan, he quite gangster. And then you have Alexander the Great, another gangster, right? And not sure if you realize, but right now our world, right, used to be our statesmen all like they go parliament and talk nice things, and now like most of the people winning look like gangster also lah. You all realize, right? So that's the reality in every era so far. Okay, so the people who thrive were the people who won the wars. They basically conquered vast lands. However, there are small exceptions. Now, the Gupta Empire was not known for their army. What they did was they conquered and they controlled vast lands through diplomacy. They were the masters of shaking hands with people. So that's another way in which you can control. But they shake hands, they're nice, but then people kneel down because then you broke, right? So then you go to the Gupta Empire for food and whatever that you needed. So they say jump, you say how high, but they're nice, okay? So that's a way to play that. The Mayans also, they actually had a very scary army. But the thing was, in fact, I have a slide here. Yeah, that's the Mayans here. So they got a very scary army, but the good news was that they never really conquered other people. Basically, my understanding is this is called ritual killing. So at certain times of the year, all the boys will go and sign up for warrior because you need to go there and show off that you're a man, right? Then you basically go to the neighbor's place and kill a few people, drag a few people back, then you symbolically slaughter them in front of your god lah. So that's how you prove that you are very strong. But the ritual killing also meant that they didn't conquer other people. They went there to make a point, then they came back and they left you alone. Okay, so basically there are different ways of winning wars in those days. Now that's Alexander the Great's empire. He conquered all the way from Greece to India on horseback, yeah, guys. He did it in 12 years. Okay, then next, this is the empire of Genghis Khan. The orange lines are what Genghis Khan managed to conquer. The blue ones are when he needed his great-grandson Kublai Khan to finish the job for him. Okay, but that's a huge empire, honestly, huge empire. Okay, then the next one that you see here is also a maths, science, astronomy, and astrology actually explored for abstract or warfare value. And you want to compare that with what I said earlier, that in the Earth era, people went to whatever industry make them more money, But then in the air era, if you think about like, these people go and discover zero, can make money, meh? Right? Decimal system, can make money, meh? Maybe if you say you can do surgery, save lives, then maybe that one still, yeah. But the thing is, you'll find that they actually, all the smart people went and did stuff that don't immediately make money on. And funnily enough, their empire survived. Don't ask me how, okay? And here's the proof. And these are actual buildings that still exist today. If you go and look at the ruins, of course, the one on the left is Chichen Itza. Now, as an astrologer, I can tell you exactly what that thing is. It measures the planetary movements of Venus. Okay, and in fact, the Mayan calendar is almost entirely based on the movement of Venus. Their harvest cycles, their war cycles is actually based on that. Now, the one on the right is actually an observatory. It still stands today. And another thing you will see here is this is the Gupta Empire. The one on the left is a university. And something I learned about archaeology is that when you look at what are the buildings that still remain after all these years, it tells you where they spent the best construction materials on. Because all the other buildings, jibaboom, die already, right? And these buildings are still standing even till today. And what this means is that the observatory was an important building for them. The university was an important building for them because some of the great palace gone already, but the university is still standing. The picture on the right is a depiction of the kind of astronomical work that the Indians did at the time. And as an astrologer, I'll tell you, I know what this is. These are all astrological calculations. It is, of course, in the Earth era, it is always described as astronomy. And of course, they are plotting the positions of the planets. But they didn't exactly plot for fun, right? Because then they needed to know things. And what you will realize is that astrology is actually a pattern in the air era. And the funny thing is, this doesn't happen in other eras. I checked already. In the fire era, they burn people like me. I'm a witch. No, I'm serious. It's like, how dare she's accurate, must be witch, right? And in the fire era, they make sure that they slaughter you in front of because against the church, then they will just cut me in multiple pieces, right? In the Earth era, they just laugh at you and say, you're not scientific. Okay, but the thing here is like in the air era, it's like it's quite lucky for me I'm born at this time, okay? But astrologers tend to do quite well in the air era. But this is, some of you may be familiar with Jyotish. This is the Indian astrology, and that's the empire that it came from. Then this is the Yuan Empire, the Yuan dynasty. And the Song dynasty don't really believe in astrology, just like all Earth eras, because they are laughable, right? But these instruments you see here are replicas, but they were commissioned at the time by Kublai Khan. He created 2 astronomical and astrology bureaus at the time. And if you think about it, why do all these kings have astrologers? Because this is the one era where this thing called the royal astrologer existed. So they are the ones who warned you if the war was coming. They're the ones who warned you if the famine was coming. I promise you, I'm not making this up. Check your history. In every other era, they kill me, okay? Then, and this is the ancient Greeks. So they also did a lot of astronomical work. Not bad for people who were like something BC, right? And of course, the Greeks invented the idea of a debate, of a philosophical idea, that you could just sort of sit around and talk about random things that cannot make money. You know what I mean? It helps if your king is a very good conqueror. Then when you conquer all the other lands, you can grab their things so that you don't need to work, right? So other people work, you grab all their stuff, and then you just sit around and talk like about things. So they invented the idea of the agora, and later on, the Romans brought it up too. Then they had the forum. right? And which is nowadays, if you think about our era, we have forums too. Reddit like online, then people like to comment, like basically a lot of it is nonsense one, right? But people like to comment anyway, so that's what you got. Okay, then also another thing is that era, they tend to incorporate foreign influences, but they maintain a strong core identity. And one of the things that I discovered as I was going through all this history, because I was thinking very deeply about our own communities as well, why is it that people are so concerned about immigrants coming in? They are so terrified, right? And one reason is because their core identity is very weak. And that's why they are so worried that if you put 12% of foreigners, that, oh no, they will take away our culture, they will change our food. That's because in the first place, your culture sucks, right? It's just not that strong. If you look at Japan, yes, it's true that they were not very open to immigrants, but the thing is, it's quite hard to change a Japanese culture, if you know what I mean. You cannot stop them from eating sushi one, they will do that forever, right? And this is something I found, that the Mongol Empire, despite the bloodthirstiness of them, one good thing is that they never imposed their religion, they never imposed their government system on other people. Now, some of us here are avid travelers, and I'm sure you've traveled to the countries where at some point the Mongolians were in charge. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was something like about 700-800 years ago. And when you go there, have you realized that you don't see Mongolian places of worship around? There's almost no trace at all of Mongolian occupation. And the reason is because they never bothered to impose themselves. They conquer you, you owe money, pay money, right? Then you do whatever you want, I don't care what you do. So that's one nice thing. Of course, they kill a lot of people. Okay? They also invested, so unlike the empires that died, who tried to keep the Earth era thing going, these guys decided that, you know what, new era, we invest in new things. So the specific investment is for delivery, communication, and trade and cultural exchange. So the easy one, I'll show you, this is the Mongolians' postal network. And it wasn't just a delivery network, it wasn't just like a message network, but this actually it strengthened the Silk Road. So at the time, the Silk Road was what made a lot of these empires very, very strong, including the Gupta Empire and Venice and all those people. Now, another thing is that, remember I said that the era is never known for fertility. Food is always a problem. And let me show you the champion of food production. This is the ultimate champion, okay, the Mayan civilization. If you know the topography, the land mass, sometimes they had all these big jungles in the South America. Now, what you see here is not a ruin. This is known as a Mayan forest garden. And what they do is that all these trees they're producing fruit, they're producing nuts, and this produce food for their people. And then some of their people, very funny, their landforms are very strange. Some people like to live on the mountain, like this kind of mountain. And they were among the first people to do terrace farming. Of course, you see this in Bali, you see these other places, but these guys were some of the earliest people to do terrace farming. Mountain also can grow food. And another group of their people stayed in the more swampy coastal area. Kind of similar to like when Singapore first started, before all the land reclamation, swamps, right? And this is what they did. So they basically made these little platform things, and then they grew food on it. Now, these guys are the masters of food production. So even as the rest of the world was starving, guess how many people were kneeling to them and basically saying, I'll do whatever you ask me to do because we are starving. And they got food. And so that becomes, if you think about it, like, food is not money, but food is better than money, right? So I tell you, food is very important. And I know the newspaper not really talking about this kind of thing, but I tell you, food is important in the era, okay? And one more, it's a strong unifying and a spiritual belief. And this is one reason why I was really debating about whether to put Russia in the first half or the second half, because this is where Russia wins. When they say, are you Russian, you stand up, right? I don't care what country you're from, you're Russian, you support us. And you know, so, and which is why the Mayans had a very, very strong culture. Everything is based on their religion. Every appointment, it's quite amazing how that is. And that's another reason why for the cultures that are not strong, and that's why I picked on South Korea just now. Because you know the South Korean thing, some people like K-pop, like the period stuff, right? You know the Chosun dynasty and all that stuff. They don't practice almost any of it anymore. It's like, it's almost scrub-free. And that's why it's very hard to actually see the original Korean culture anymore. Okay, the last one here is that in the Earth era, almost all business, almost all activity is determined by CEOs, by governments who tell us what to do. They set the agenda. But in the air era, you might be surprised that actually, remember I said the Mongolians, they don't really care what you do. You do whatever you like. And for what it's worth, Alexander the Great, his empire too big, last time don't have satellite. And so what it means is that it's just too big. I can't be bothered what you do as long as I ride my horse there, you owe money, pay money, right? And so the thing is, actually, all the activity, because all the bureaucracy has collapsed, Roman Empire is gone, Song Dynasty is gone. And what this means is that you left all these like random people, right? And then they just somehow made it work. And so this is what you see here is the Silk Road as of the time of 400 AD. And that was the kind of network that they created. Now, some people who pay a lot of attention to trade and geopolitics, you might start to realize that map look a bit familiar. We got such map in the world right now, right? Every time air era, this map appear. You know what I mean? Like Alexander the Great, the map similar, right? Then it's very funny, right? Every time air era, only the same map comes up. Okay, then, so of course that brings me to China, doesn't it? Okay, so China is a very strange country, both strange in facts, but also in astrology. And so the thing is, of course, I applied my scorecard. I wanted to know, would we consider China to be an air era country? Because we definitely, I mean, the map might hint very strong, right? Their Belt and Road Initiative looks almost exactly like the Silk Road. And the other thing is like, in recent years, they've been known for WeChat. Some of us who have been to China, you are amazed by how much they've been able to integrate tech way before anyone ever did. And their country, at the time, biggest country in the world, everybody was using tech. And then DeepSeek, basically last year, caught a lot of people out by surprise that they were better than the Americans, right? And so in that sense, there's something about them that EVs are also, BYD is one of the best in the world. So it kind of looks like China is doing a good job, like sort of competing in the air thing. But China has a lot of other problems because their GDP is made up from almost entirely things like manufacturing. So that they basically all these old style Earth era industrial thing. They did it more than anyone else in the world at one point. And then also their GDP was boosted up by construction and infrastructure. So you all remember those years where basically the condos were coming up like mushrooms, right? Cities were coming up like fungi. And basically they had all these train stations and highways going to God knows where. But so the truth is, a lot of their money that they make today is from Earth era means. And that means that if they are going to change the way in which they make their money, it's going to take a very, very big transformation from China. And we also have this same problem that South Korea has. China has lost its history, right? And most of us here, the majority of us here are ethnic Chinese. And you know how the Chinese history is like this amazing thing, but then quite a lot of like, you know, they start scrubbing out their period dramas. So now there are rules, right? You cannot like anyhow put up period dramas. And myself, my own family is into Teochew Wayang. And you know, when we go to China, because of the Cultural Revolution, it was scrubbed clean. So a lot of the young people have no idea what Chinese Wayang is, and it's a very sad thing. So China has lost its history. So in that sense, there are parts of China that don't quite fit with the air era thing. So they a bit half-half. So a bit like the Gupta Empire, you know, they had the tech stuff, but then their politics, they didn't quite get it right. Okay, so here's some updates here. So basically, Bloomberg thinks that as of August last year, that of course their land spending has gone down. Because I think China got to a point where there's nothing more to build already. Everything also built already, every corner also built already. Okay, and of course, there are other Earth era problems that other Earth communities are getting, like job market problem, youth unemployment is ridiculously high. And also now they have what the Americans are calling a consumption problem. Because if you think that people got no job, and you know Chinese people, when they think the future not so bright, then they save their money, then they don't spend, right? And so right now the worry is that there could be deflation happening in China. Okay, then of course there's the opposite view, right? IMF thinks that the IMF former deputy chief says like maybe China can take over as the top economy. And that's one of the questions I get asked most often because people know I do forecast, right? Then they can ask me, hey, so who's the new power? Is it China? I don't know. It's not a clear answer, right? And I think most of you agree. And but the biggest thing here is that Silk Road. And honestly, if Genghis Khan could see this, and the fact that they did it in something like 20 years-ish, you know, like I think even Genghis Khan might be quite impressed. You know what I mean? Definitely, you know, Alexander the Great will be impressed, you know, and that's a major network. But you know, I keep coming up against this. You know, all their cities look like this. Every city looks like this, and they all look like carbon copies, and they kind of look a bit like New York City. They look a bit like Miami, they look like Singapore. So all the cities all look more or less the same, and this tells me there is no culture. And this is the part that's very worrying. So let me start here. So of course, I said just now, first half, world economy is going to be a bad place. Honestly, for China, does it really matter whether is it US or Japan falls, right? Either way, the effect is going to be bad. Whichever one falls first, the other one gets taken down too. That's the way how everything is interconnected. So China's going to be a victim as well. And what I see here is that anything that is close to the ascendant there is that China has been rejected, vilified. And you know how the West, they say some pretty horrible things about Chinese culture. And that's been happening. And in fact, for this year, it's going to get super stronger. In fact, since March of 2025, you all know that the tariff thing quite obvious, right? That, I mean, he was targeting everybody, but actually only targeting one person, one country. And of course, the people have been suffering. A lot of places have been closed down. But I also see this very interesting thing, which I could not explain at the start. So I started preparing for today's event something like about a couple of months ago. I could not explain this portion. What you see here is that the green thing at the top of the chart is Chiron, is a pain indicator. When it's in the 10th house, it affects the leader of the country, the leadership of the country. But you know, it's like, when you think of all the dictators of the world, you know, got the usual faces, all your Donald J. Trump, all your Putin, and then you got the Xi Jinping, confirm the same three faces, right? And then, but this thing here tells me that I don't think his position is as strong as we think. And for the longest time, I was very confused. Like, I just couldn't see it, like, really? Like, who's going to be able to take him out, right? And then what I see also by the end of this year, and notice that period until March 2026 is around the time that I expect the world to be a bit screwy, right, because of the financial thing. So Uranus is crossing the IC. Now, my students here know that the IC is at the bottom of the chart. So whenever we have planets that are crossing over the IC, what this means is that it affects the people, the base of the country. And Uranus is not a good planet that you want to have following the economic upheaval. So what the problem is here is that it's going to be a bit like an earthquake. Now, fourth house, what does it affect? Things like real estate. No surprise there, right? So in fact, Evergrande collapsed, but it's one of the biggest, but it's not the only big real estate company. Some of them haven't fully collapsed yet. There are plenty of Chinese people who paid top dollar for their apartments, and that's not resolved, not even by amount. So here's some data, and my data is a bit old. I know some of the trade people will tell me it's a bit old, but these are the countries that are holding the most amount of US debt. And in fact, China is up there. I know that they are like, you know, letting go of their thing. So it is outdated picture. In fact, it used to be higher. It used to be like more than Japan actually. So China seems to know what's up. And I thought you all might be interested to know that Singapore is not very far down the list. Okay, so that means we hold quite a bit of US debt too. Okay, so basically their real estate crisis has not touched rock bottom yet. Means there's some opportunity for it to go even further. But okay, so here's the thing. I could not let go of the fact that I keep seeing this leader thing. And there were so many indications of how the leader is not doing so great. And so I had to do a bit of CSI. And I can tell you, information about China is very hard to get because they are very secretive. But I was debating whether or not to tell you all this, but I decided, never mind, I'll tell you, okay? So March to July, which is now, and it's been happening for a few months now. Now, the first thing that we see is that there's a whole lineup here. Now, Pluto, in the 12th house suggests conspiracy theories or operations happening behind the background. That's not new for China, honestly, okay? But the Jupiter, now that's interesting. It tells me that there is a change in philosophy. And in fact, this started triggering from about just a few months ago. So I know that there's a power struggle happening behind the background. And that, from what I can tell, is not being reported in the news. So I'm taking a risk here. I have no idea what I'm talking about here also. Now, between July to September, yeah, it's like, you know, every time I do these events, I'm taking risks for you, okay? Yeah, if I'm wrong, my career down the drain, I tell you, okay? So anyway, okay, so July to September, that's coming up. That what I see here is that there is discussion with the public. So it does seem like in very, very shortly, you are going to hear about what this thing is about, right? So right now, nobody really knows for sure. And so a serious discussion about going public with this secret operation that they are doing. And I'm also expecting that the CCP might take a different philosophy. And one other thing I see there is an uncharacteristic criticism of the leader. And this is very strange because you know how you never see any criticism of presidency anywhere, right? I can't find it. I really searched the internet, and you know how even if there is, it gets scrubbed from the internet like very quickly, right? And most Chinese people know better than to say bad things about him. So the thing here is, I don't know, is if people are going to start saying shit about him, then why would that be? Okay, so I found this. Okay, so but what did get reported in the news, and that's what got me down the rabbit hole. I'm sharing the rabbit hole now. This is speculation. So I don't know if you all saw, there was an article recently about a general who disappeared. Right? Some of you saw in CNA or whatever, right? The general disappeared. And I searched the whole internet, very hard to find, only Angmo articles there to talk about this. But it says here that they think that he's purging his advisors. So apparently he does that every now and then. He don't like you, then he get rid of you, right? But the chart does not show me that he is purging his advisors. In fact, it shows me the opposite, because it is 12th house. So 12th house is like a step behind the back. Okay, so basically, now his advisor disappeared, and it wasn't just one advisor. I believe there is another military guy, correct me if I'm wrong, but another military guy also recently just disappeared also. Two military generals disappeared. And so you have to decide, is it that this guy is killing off his best friends, or is it possible, because my chart says that somebody is trying to take him out. So then, if I want to take you out, I make sure I kill off your military best friends first. I don't know if that makes sense to you all, okay? So I'm only telling you that astrologically, the chart looks a lot more like the guy disappear is not Xi Jinping make him disappear. It's the people who don't like Xi Jinping is making his friends disappear. Okay, that's what my charts tell me. Okay, so basically, if I'm correct, even if I'm not correct, here's what the chart shows me. That from February to March next year, and that's the time where Japan and the US goes into a very strange place, right? So financially, they are not great already. And then suddenly, China starts a new regime. It's a completely new regime. And so first of all, what I see here is that normally China is known for being a bit rigid. You know, they are not the most flexible people. And suddenly now, there's a flexible perspective. Some things last time cannot, now people are talking about maybe can. Okay, so this already gets me to think even further that, okay, unless Xi Jinping gets a personality change, right, this is very unlikely to happen if he's still around, okay? Then also, this thing, okay, so just now I said that for India, when you have Uranus crossing over the ascendant, same thing with South Korea, that's when you get chaos. But when the thing crossing over the ascendant is not Uranus, it is Pluto. So it tells me that the people, the general feel in China, there's the positive reading and the negative reading. The positive is transformation. It's like all the things that last time people scared to do, scared to say, suddenly now all can say already. Okay, that's one possibility. Okay? The other possibility is that people are living in fear. So which means it looks a little bit like a martial law sort of thing. Suddenly it's like facial recognition software surveillance in every corner. Now that is possible, although I would like to believe that because the flexible perspective is there, I would like to believe in the possibility that maybe China goes through a transformation. Because let's be straight here. If they are going to get an air era transformation, then it cannot be that their people are locked in. Because if they're going to do the Gupta Empire thing, because notice, China is doing the Gupta Empire thing. They go to every corner of the world and shake hands with people who want to do business, right? So there is hope here, okay, that they are doing the Gupta Empire, which means they have to open up. They have to open up their culture. Okay, and from April to August of next year, so that's after the financial thing, right? The unfortunate thing is, I think China gets hit quite badly financially. So the Earth era part of their culture, they get punished for it. They get punished very badly. So what I see here is that all the indications are across the 2nd and 8th axis. This is a monetary problem. Okay, so what I suspect is that they might have to stabilize the currency. If the currency is affected, I also see the possibility that their recovery is going to be a bit slow. Because the truth is, the EV stuff and the DeepSeek stuff is a very, very small part of their industry. So which means that if China wants to capitalize on that, they really need to do a lot of their investment in. Okay, so yeah, and the leaders are being accountable, and also China is going to experience shortages, just like Japan. Okay, it's similar indication. So I mean, some of my students here, you either operate in or have family in China. I sort of recommended that you inform your family members about it because it will affect them. Okay, let's go further. So in fact, China can revert to its true nature. And here I want to share a quick concept with you, all right? You know how some people, they tried to do things in the Earth era and it didn't work? Okay, basically Hitler tried to do the conquer your neighbor thing, right? It didn't work in the Earth era. He failed very quickly because that kind of nonsense is a fire era thing. right? So basically, you know how the French attack the English, then the English attack the French. It's the story of the fire era. But when you try to do it in the earth era, people are like, hey, what are you doing here, right? No, people don't like that. And the thing is, China did the same thing. They tried to do a cultural revolution in the earth era, and it didn't work because then they're starving, right? And then the rest of the world is like, hello, we are making money, then you are like, there, no money, right? So that's a stupid thing, like when you do things that don't match the current era, it's not going to work. Because like as people say, you align with the energy. Okay, but the thing here is that actually the weird thing is that all the crazy things that sometimes China want to do that the rest of the world don't understand, actually it aligns with the era. Right? They talk about collective identity, they talk about socialism, even some of the communist ideas. If you think about it, it fits with the era. My students here know Aquarius is everybody share, right? It's a collective identity. Gemini is quick information. Nobody faster than China, I can tell you that. Right? And so actually a lot of the core elements of what it means to be a China person today actually fits. So there is a possibility that sometimes you need to remove the barrier to being fully air era. So this is what's happening next year. There's a sudden change in its foundation. They are suddenly very open. And they also are deliberately going against the past regime. So whatever was the norm, you might see China shifting very quickly. Okay, this is a quick transformation. And also because Uranus is in the 4th house, I'm going out on a limb here, I might be wrong, but there are certain offshoots in China right now. Places like Xinjiang, places like Tibet, they are not fully China. Their culture is very different from the rest of China. At this stage, because there's a bit of chaos, if they wanted to have their own independence, this might happen, right? Because China is now, they're defining what their culture is going to be, and some people are not going to resonate with it. Okay, so that's I think is a possibility. And also their international PR, it may improve somewhat. I think it's like sometimes when you can prove that your philosophy works better, right? Then people start to realize that you're not so scary and you're not so weird. Okay, so, and this also means that the things that the international community is vilifying them for, you start to see maybe it makes some sense, okay? And that's for China. Okay, I want to talk about Germany. And Germany is getting a lot of attention nowadays because, again, it's also one of those weird countries. It's pretty like not doing well. Usually you see a newspaper, it just got a lot of bad news, things like this. So in fact, it says here in January of this year, this is before tariff, that their factory activity last year ended with accelerated decline. So it's like, that's not the kind of words you want to see. Now, especially after the tariff thing came out, Volvo cars, right? So this is just one brand. Steel production went down 10 out of 10. So the thing is, Germany is, at least on paper, looks like it's a terrible state right now. But yet it is on my doing well list. And the reason is because the charts tell me that Germany transforms its economy. So what you see here is there's a bit of a pattern here. China hits rock bottom and decides to make changes quickly. Now, Germany is also going to hit rock bottom because at first the story sucks. So at first, this is April, where of course the tariff came, right? So then you can see the opposition is from 3-9, basically the foreign people impose problems on you, so now there are trade barriers. And then right now, in July to August, it's going to get worse. So over the next few months, you're going to see really bad news about Germany. However, from August to December, something changes. Look at this. So first of all, you get a death and rebirth. So my students will know, Pluto means you die, then you reborn. And that's where even the factories may change their entire purpose. So especially in industrial engineering. And then there's another thing here. This idea of a community of tech geniuses. And you know something, Germany has a history of both of these things. Some of you know your World War II history. And you know how BMW was making cars since forever, right? And then Volkswagen and what? You know what happened during World War II? They stopped making cars. They started making tanks instead. You all remember that, right? So let's just say Germany knows how to do this. They know how to do this, okay? To basically change their factory, within a short time do something else, they're very clever. And another thing is Germany has a history of gathering together a community of very smart people. Consider that before they started killing Jewish people, Einstein was actually part of a major scientific community in Germany. Somehow smart people like to hang out in Germany, And Sigmund Freud Sigmund Freud, officially it was in Austria, but basically a lot of those people were German. And they hung around to develop psychology and to think about how humans work. So Germany has this way of being able to combine people, which is a very interesting idea because America is starting to kick away all their smart people. Isn't it? Right? This is what happened, right? So they basically told Harvard that, okay, all your foreigner people, like, don't give them visa. Right? And then they do that to Columbia University, and who thinks that he's going to do that to all the major universities? I think so. And another thing about smart people, right, is that they know when it is time to leave. They know when it's time to not stay, and which means they need to find a new home, right? And if you are a smart person and you are like a professor of something, it's like, do you think Germany might be one of your top choices? I would go there. Right? And so basically, Germany is going to benefit from the fact that Trump doesn't like smart people. I think he doesn't understand what they're saying half the time. So what happens is that, so then the question here is that, okay, so nobody wants to buy their steel because no one wants to buy cars anymore. Right? So I have a friend in the audience who was considering buying a German car. I don't think it's a good idea. Okay? And also, but steel that was used in the Earth era for cars can be used in the air era for armament. Rearmament. It's very obvious that war is coming to Europe. Somebody has to protect Europe because NATO isn't going to protect Europe. I think he's made that very clear, right? NATO is not interested. Trump is not interested. So Germany and France have to step up. Between the two, Germany has more experience making weapons, right? And so, so you can see they will ramp up for war. And basically, when you make weapons, there will be war because when you make ready, must use, right? And so, so basically, the government changes their priority completely, and technology becomes their top priority. So this happens in almost the entirety of 2026 and all the way until 2027. So here's what I see. First of all, that the populace is feeling threatened, obviously, right, because they're doing so badly. And this means that the people are now feeling like, okay, survival instinct. Could this be from finance? Could this be from the fact that war is coming? Doesn't matter, they are feeling threatened. Okay, and then you tap on their discipline and their hard work. This is a very classic German thing because that's what happened in the Weimar Republic. This is what happened in World War II also. When they want to work, they work damn hard. Okay, so Germany is dominant. And let me tell you, even before they start going into technology, even as of now, let me show you what are the developments. Germany is now #1 for hydrogen power. In an air era world where you don't want to burn fossil fuels, they are #1 in hydrogen. Okay, and TSMC, Taiwan is going to open a chip design center in Germany, and they are designing for later AI development. Okay, so that's happening. Now, Germany is the country that is most connected with the space program in the EU, and they've announced a 2030 program for space. So space isn't just a US, China, India thing. Now Germany wants to get in on the story. Okay, and this is something I found on an education site about studying robotics. And apparently there are right now 123 universities in Germany offering robotics courses with 368 in English. We haven't counted the programs that are in German yet. These are just the ones in English. And think about how smart the Germans are, because if you're American and you want to get out of there and you have a bit of background in science and robotics, that's a pretty good idea. 368 programs in English. I think some of you are even considering maybe you might want to go there too, right? It's a great idea. And look at how fast people are moving. And this is today, you know, the transformation haven't come, and this is pre-transformation, and that's how quick it is. Okay? And that's why I say I wouldn't bet against Germany. I would not. They are going to do really well. One more, Malaysia. Okay, Malaysia, the story a bit mixed. Okay, so the KL Singapore HSR, that one cannot get off the ground. Their maglev train cannot leave. Okay, so without private sector involvement, Anwar can't get it going, and also they have a lot of infrastructure projects that are delayed. This is just one of them, a water infrastructure. And okay, so basically there's been weak investor sentiment. There's been a lot of problems getting money into Malaysia. First of all, the investors are vacillating. So this is happening even up to now. So as of this year, you'll find that the story in Malaysia is not great. All right. So people don't really want to invest. Some people say yes, then last minute pull out. And also the financial fears are there. Partially, I suspect because of Malaysia's exposure to US debt and also to Japanese debt, possibly. Okay. But the thing is, there are some players like CIMB is suggesting that actually if a lot of countries and companies are slashing their exposure to US debt, maybe some of this money might go to Malaysia. Now there's a lot of talk about money flowing towards emerging economies, going away from OECD but going towards the smaller, less rich countries. And that's why, and this is where I think it's very important, the leadership, because the charts tell me that, first of all, that the determination to transform the land in Malaysia is strong. So as you can see, there are all these projects. They plan it already, but then got no money. Okay, and the vision is strong, and all the vision is to connect Malaysia to as many places as possible. And then I also see that, yes, the financial resources. Now this one happens from April next year onwards. So this is after the world goes wonky, the money problem happens. And don't get me wrong, Malaysia's not going to get rich immediately. It will be very slow, right? And the thing is, here's what I think is going to happen. If you're a rich person and you don't want your money to be in the US, your money cannot be in Switzerland, your money cannot be in Japan, your money cannot be in South Korea. It's like, you know, the number of countries that you can send your money to a bit reduced. And I think by now, Singaporeans will know you are on the list, okay? The rich people like Singapore, we are very safe. But then they maybe don't mind Malaysia. Okay, so this is where the progressive investors, so they like the idea that there's going to be something new, something that people are building. There's a story I haven't heard before. Maybe I might try. They may not send all their money to Malaysia, but they'll send some, okay? And what I see here is that, so from all the projects, I did a lot of research, and there are many, many projects in Malaysia that are being slated for connection. And guys, this is very, very important, because don't forget, in the air era, that Silk Road is where you want to be. You want to be connected to that Silk Road. It is extremely important, and Malaysia has their priorities right. Now, the only thing that the Prime Minister is lacking is moolah. He just needs the dollars in, because the projects are there. They all kind of stuck. Okay, let's talk about Vietnam. Quick one. Okay, now Vietnam, same problem as Thailand. They are export country. They gonna 46% tariff, one of the highest in the world. But here's the great story about Vietnam. Okay, now what the chart tells me is that these guys they don't give up one. Maybe it helps to have survived the Vietnam War. Okay, but the thing is, the chart shows me that despite not having money, they continue investing. And this thing was something similar that we saw in the Switzerland chart. But Switzerland was more about like, okay, no, we have to protect, maintain the old Earth era thing. Vietnam is basically saying, forget it, done already, die already. Okay, you accept as quickly as possible that it's dead already. And then what they do is they started investing into the people's education. Okay, you are going to see a lot of this happening. First, the people's education, and on top of that, they want to modernize their manufacturing. It's a bit too slow. They want to put everything together. And also, there's a lot of sudden and rapid change. It will come out of nowhere. You will not recognize the Vietnam that you see in a few years' time. Now, here's what I see. That this is a recent thing, that the government, of course, they are broke, just like everyone else, because no money, right? And they need to tax. And so there are 5 million of these small businesses. Anyone here been to Vietnam before will know that there are all these like auntie uncle business all on the street selling all sorts of things, right? And these people are usually not paying tax because they're not registered, illegal business, right? But now the government is saying, I don't care, all of you pay tax. Okay? And the only way you can do that is to make them digitalized. So that's the new rule. Now everyone has to go and install some like digital invoicing software so that the government know how much you make, they can ask you to pay tax. Okay, and of course this in the short run is going to kill their economy, because why? All these poor people, they're not very educated, which is why they are doing illegal business, right? And the thing is, they don't know how to use all this software. Okay, but let me tell you what it does. Number one, it creates jobs. Because now 5 million of these businesses need to install this thing, and the auntie, uncle doesn't know, right? Young fellow go and install for them. Number one, got jobs. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second is that, what is the fastest way to make everyone learn how to use technology? Force them to do it, if not illegal, right? And so the thing is, can you imagine all the auntie, uncle that you see on the street, right? They're going to be as tech savvy as the beggar in China who asks you to scan QR code to give me money. No, I'm serious. That's how China did it, right? They force you to do it. You no choice. You better do it. If not, you go jail. Then, of course, you do lah. And then all these young people who are unemployed, right? Then you faster go and attend course. Then you go out there. Each person transform 1,000 business in 1 year. They will do it because they need the work. They are starving poor right now. Okay, and so let me show you here that China's been part of a +1 program for a very long time because they want to move out of China, right? Then Vietnam was one of the top choices. And unlike China that got a bit of a reputation for like shoddy products, Vietnam did not have the same reputation. In fact, Made in Vietnam has been getting fairly positive reputation. And in fact, they started with electronics, they started making Nike shoes, and now I've heard that quite a few chip companies are thinking about making chips in Vietnam. So Vietnam is going AI, guys. Okay, and so what I also see here is that Vietnam will transform as people. Because some of my students here know that when you have progress planets that move into new signs, it's like that person got new personality. Okay, so what I see from March 2023 onwards, the first one, progress ascendant change sign. Now for the longest time, Vietnam had this very old-fashioned image. You know, like the old man with the green uniform with the yellow star on, right? They look very like 1971. But now they're going to change their reputation. They are going to start to appear to be very, what I call the precise craftsmen. So they're almost like Switzerland making all the luxury watches, very precise. And then their general reputation becomes digital and agile. So every time you see Vietnam's name, they're all about AI, they're all about digital agility. And then, lastly, what kicks in, last one, is that you start to see their leadership as being visionary. People who see decades in advance. So these are people, let me tell you, this is not a rich country. It's not. But the thing is, look at how quickly they're moving. Look at the date that's there. How quickly they will move. Okay? And so you see all the countries on my list are people like China, they hit rock bottom, they move up. Germany hit rock bottom, move up. Vietnam hit rock bottom, move up. Okay? And look, this is something I saw that is a program that they launched last year, and they aim to transform 1 million businesses by 2026. Guys, that's in 2026 is in 6 months' time, guys. Now June already. And this is, if you look at the date, this was just 2 weeks ago, June 10. They rolled out their first wave of digital training, and 8,000 hungry young people went and signed up. And I want to show you something. The aim of this program is to equip 20 million young people with digital business skills. You know what's 20 million people? 10 times our population in Singapore. 10 times. For every Singaporean you have here, they got 20 of those IT guys. Guys, I would not write Vietnam off. I think they're going to be the new star in Southeast Asia. Okay, of course, brings me to Singapore. Okay, you all decide for yourself, good news or bad news. Okay, so what's Singapore going to do about it? The world's going to be a bit messy, right? I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have task force. Guaranteed. This one I guarantee, right? You all know we have task force, right? Okay, but I want to be fair, okay? I want to be fair. Among the countries that I've looked at, the truth is Singapore government is very cautious. And they are not stupid. They know this is coming. It's obvious, right? Okay, and so the first thing that you're going to see is the new labour arrangements. That's happening between August to October. I just checked Channel News Asia. The Prime Minister is giving his National Day rally on the 17th of August. Okay, so last year they started to give out baby bonus. This year, I suspect it will be labour arrangements. Why? Because a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Okay, first is that the first thing you'll see during this period, our representatives will be going out there shaking every hand they can find, every bilateral agreement, and that's already happening right now. And the second is that around the time that I suspect when he's giving his new rally, there will be a lot of new structures. Most of it is going to be designed for financial security. Make sure that as you guys are maybe losing your jobs, that you don't starve to death, basically. Okay, no surprise, it will be CDC vouchers, right? And then, and there will be rules about whether you can fire people or not, like whether you fire people must give how many months notice, that kind of thing lah. You all know what I mean? So basically, the whole idea is to not let this thing happen as a shock, because that is the Singapore style. Everything is planned, controlled. They know people are going to lose their jobs, but the thing is, then it has to be done in stages so that people don't riot in the streets lah. Okay, that's how this works, right? And so, of course, but we will get into damage control mode by October to December as the US starts to talk a bit funny things already. Then all the bad news on the finance is going to show up. Okay, then around the time where the bad news hits, the bad stuff happens between the February to March period, that's when the shocks will come in the stock market. And suddenly the whole country is going to get into a flurry because all the damage control mode will start to kick in, right? So basically, as the HR people, I know quite a few HR people here, you will be very busy, okay? And what I also see very specifically is that Mercury will hit Chiron in the 6th house, for my students who know what that is. I think the job losses will hit around January. Okay, January means Chinese New Year, not going to be so happy. Okay, of course there'll be a lot of government measures lah, so those will kick in. And some of the, basically as the services start to not work so well, some confusions will show up. Okay, so things like, remember when the Jetstar thing went south, right? And then people are complaining, don't know whether your plane flying, not flying. So that's one company. Now you imagine multiple companies, suddenly they're axing departments, right? So there will be services that are completely down. And people are going to go like, okay, so is it on or not on? Like, do we still have this or no? Okay, so that's something that you have to be prepared lah. I mean, people power services, right? And then you also start to see, I was talking with somebody earlier today about the Great Eastern thing. You know how like now you go to Mount E, then no guarantee that it will be covered due to high costs. But you know, it's like you can see from the company perspective why they do that, because really high cost lah, right? Cannot cover ma. But then from the consumer perspective, it's like, basket, I pay you 20 years already. Then now I go in, then you tell me I sick, then at my lowest point I sick, then you tell me no cover. It's like, you know what I'm saying? So what we want to really consider, guys, is that these are just singular examples. I'm not picking on these companies. I'm basically saying that you need to be prepared that things like this will happen. That some companies will say, oh, we provide this service, but now, sorry, too expensive already, we cannot cover, then cancel. Like, then what you going to do, right? Okay, so you got to be prepared, guys. Okay, the next one is this thing I'm very worried about in Singapore. Okay, because when we start losing jobs, this nonsense starts showing up. Classic Singapore. Okay, between March to April, after everybody collect their CDC voucher already, then we are going to get this lunar eclipse here that is on the indicator there, which is always about the secret rich in Singapore. Now, I tell you, it's very simple. A lot of rich people will come here because got no other place in the world to go. They will all come here. And all it takes is one not very smart person to go and haolian his money in a way that pisses people off. And then it will hit the newspapers, right? Classic. It will be all over Instagram. And then there's going to be this rhetoric here that is like, oh, and it hurts badly because then people got no job, they got no money, then you still show off your wealth, right? So that might happen. Now, another thing is that because the anti-immigrant thing is showing up in Singapore, you have to admit it is there. And that means that when people start losing their jobs, then there will be ultra sensitivity to, hey, why you fire the Singaporean, then you keep the Filipino, or you keep the Indonesian, or you keep the Malaysian. That this kind of thing will start showing up. Whether it's that person's fault or not, it doesn't matter. People are just pissed, right? So basically, all of that underlying thing gets triggered. Okay, I'm worried about this. And then from April onwards, basically, it's a year-long sensitivity to data, statistics. You know, like the Straits Times post, like how many % people lost job, whatever. I tell you, everybody will get very sensitive. Just like if you all recall, very recently, they said they created how many jobs, right? Then 90% went to foreigners. You know how that went insane? And that's before you start losing your job. Okay, and so that's the other thing that I want to really say to my audience here. I know some of you are not from Singapore, but most of you are. And one of the big issues with the money that's coming to Singapore is that Singapore is going to be okay because there's a lot of money coming here. There's a lot of problems that money can solve. But then there are two problems with that. One is that country okay doesn't mean you are okay. It's not the same thing, right? It's not the same thing. And the second thing is that because Singapore doesn't get the punch in the face like other countries do, did you see for yourself how quickly other countries will move? And after today, when you go out of this auditorium and tell your friends, it's like, hey, my astrologer say this bad thing will happen. You know how many people won't believe you? And then in April next year, right, when you say, hey, look, hey, the astrologer correct, this bad thing happened, then Singaporeans say, never mind, I got CDC voucher. Right? I mean, am I correct or not? Right? People are not going to move because then they can go NTUC and buy like chicken and buy whatever, they won't change. And that's my biggest worry. Okay, and so basically the first thing here is that a lot of the measures that I see from the chart, okay, I could be wrong, and maybe the government might surprise me, okay? This is not a criticism of the government. I want to make clear that actually the problem here is that you are too well taken care of. Does that make sense? You are too well taken care of until people don't know how to survive when bad things actually happen. And a lot of these solutions, you can laugh at Thailand and say that they're short-term thinking, but actually aren't we also doing the same thing? Right? Because you remember how during COVID, right, there are a lot of bullshit jobs. Remember when you go to the building, they must scan the trays together. Then got one person there just to make sure you got scanned. You know what I mean? This is a totally unproductive job. But why they do that? So that people got job, right? So the truth is, that's a short-term solution. I'm also worried that people are waiting for top-down action. And what this means is that people are not deciding for themselves what they want to do. Consider in Vietnam that there are 5 million of these small businesses, and I will bet with you that more of these small businesses will show up in Vietnam. And if Singaporeans are sitting around waiting to work for a big, gigantic organization like you have always done, we are going to be in deep trouble, okay? Because, and also, that we start developing very strong anti-foreigner sentiment, but we are not facing up to the reality that you are no longer competitive. Because if you think you speak English better than the Vietnamese, just so you know AI can do direct translation, right? And the thing is, and the reality is, the Vietnamese guy is asking a third of what you're asking, and even to him, that's a good pay. That's the truth, right? And that guy might be more better with AI than you, the rate that they are training people, you know. So the thing is, the Singaporeans are not realizing that this is not another financial meltdown. Right? This isn't going to be like, never mind, no job for a few months, then after that go and apply again. That's not going to happen this time. Right? This is the mother of all financial crises, guys. Right? And we don't hit rock bottom, so there is no mindset change to air era. And we are still obsessed. Let me tell you what's going to happen in April. People are still concerned about their property price. Right? Like, oh man, my loan, hard to refinance. Right? And then people are still concerned about, why the CDC voucher not enough? Why you got more? How come you got more and you got less? Right? And then people are just concerned about, like, I got retrenched, and then my package is only how many dollars per month or week served or whatever. Like to compare all this rubbish, right? But they are not seeing the big picture. Okay? And it doesn't register to them that a lot of the jobs are not going to be available anymore, because when the era changed, this is the one nail in the coffin that may kill off some industries, and they will never come back again because the era changed and some people are holding on by a thread. Most of us here are professionals. You know that there are some industries, you know the boss is counting pennies now already, cannot make it already. This one coming means no more already, right? And even if there's jobs, the job is not for human. Taken already. And during this period, the guy got no money. You know what he's going to do? He's not going to hire humans. He will just install the AI because it's free, right? And even if they need a human, it is not at the salary that you used to get, because they can hire a person online for 1/3 of the fee. And I don't think most Singaporeans get it. People are just, I told one of my friends about this event. She worked for a bank. And I told her, okay. She said, I think you're overreacting. She told me I'm overreacting. Then I said, okay, so you work for a bank, right? What's the plan here? Basically, financial crisis hits, you lose your job, all the banks fire people. What's your plan? She said, now I got skills future. my friend, really, really, true story, okay? So my biggest worry is that we'll be left complaining about why the old game not fun anymore. Because last time fun, get high-paying job, then can go holiday 3 times a year. I know, I'm from this country. But the problem is, people don't realize the whole world changed game already. Germany is playing a different game. You're still playing the old game and ask me why not fun, right? And Vietnam has moved far beyond you already. In fact, Vietnam started already. Have you started? Is another question, right? And so now let's talk about the air era transition plan. Let's go into this before I have no more time, okay? 19 to 24 is a page. Okay, so I want to tell you about, as I'm planning this plan, I can tell I got a bit depressed when I was doing this. And I searched history desperately to find, is there a group of people? Because so far all the empires I found all big country. They got millions of people. They got a lot of money and land, which we don't have. So I got to be practical, right? There's some things Singapore cannot do. So I'm thinking, is there such a place in history where they don't have a lot of people? They have problems like us, no natural resources, and then the people are a bit rich, then like no incentive to move, right? And are there examples of these people who made it? Because I do it to give you guys a model, a structure, something that you can look forward to, okay? So I did find a place. In history, they only maximum have 150,000 people, less than us. And like us, they're also an island. They look like us, actually. Okay, now, this place don't really have an official religion, but they are surrounded by upstairs, downstairs, left and right, all religious. Okay, and these people, this place is always full of foreigners. And the foreigners are always rich and always skilled. Now this place, do you know where this is? It's Venice. It's Venice, guys, Venice, still standing today. And here, I want to tell you something about Venice, okay? It was formed just as the Roman Empire was going down. And it survived the Roman Empire. And then 800 years later, Song Dynasty came up And Song Dynasty died, and they're still there. And after the Song Dynasty died already, Venice was still there for another couple hundred years. They survived not just one, but 2 air eras. So if you like to survive, I suggest you listen to what they did. Yes? Oh, don't worry, I'll get there. Okay, so let's go to what did they do? What are we doing that is a bit wrong, and what we might want to change to? Now, first thing is that places like Singapore are trying to spend resources, try to keep the status quo. Wow, 10,000 people lost job. Let's try and give them job again. That's the whole idea, right? And the idea is we're looking for long-term structured setups. As an astrologer, one of the things I get consulted on very often is that, hey, May, I keep gonna all these contract job, part-time job. Is it possible, like, can you see from my chart, can I get a permanent job? I'm not very young already. I want something permanent and stable. Now, if you're asking me these questions, you are trying to do this. You're trying to keep the Earth era thing. It doesn't work, I'm sorry. There isn't a place that you can go to get that. So what works is that you become like the Venetians. They are not trying to set up something long-term. They want to invest in a network for big deliveries, for communication. They want to exchange things. And their setups are always temporary, always changeable and modular. So when you know how Marco Polo, he traveled, and the thing is the group of people he traveled with, they always change. And what are they selling? They always change one. Do they sell corn, make money, then you sell corn, then another day sell something else, make money, you change. That's how it works. And that's why, if you think about it, Vietnam is like that also. Have you realized? And the people on the ground in China, not the ultra-rich, the not-so-rich one, they also like that one. Today sell, tomorrow don't sell, something else already. That's why they're going to survive. So people on the left, they're not going to make it. What you want to aim for is something like that. You want to be in small groups. You want to travel up and down that Belt and Road Initiative. You want to figure out if there are railroads. And if you are not a tech person, that's fine. You know, at the railroads, at each station, there's businesses, isn't it? There are people selling things. People need services. What are you doing sitting here in Singapore on your ass, right? Don't do that. Okay, next is, like, you see foreigners, you think that they are here to take your job, right? And then you create communities, but for no other reason than to push the foreigner out. Okay, but no, that's not what you do. Because stupid is the Venetian who sees the rich foreigner coming and say, hey, you get lost, you're taking my job. No, the smart Venetian say, let's do business with him lah. He got money, right? He got money, maybe you got no money, he got money. And perhaps you have some idea for a business and he has certain skills. Maybe he can make something and you could be like, you know what, bro, I'll sell for you, right? We have a deal. So the thing is, Singaporeans, we are full of rich foreigners here, right? They got money. And these are foreigners who have skills. Some of them are tech people, right? Google and all these people, they're going to start firing people, guys. Those guys got no job. Why are you not going to them and say, hey, bro, I got idea for app. You work with him, right? And so you tap on their skills. And don't forget, when you collaborate with them, they can speak languages you cannot speak. They know things about cultures you don't know, right? And these foreign friends are your gateway to a foreign place, right? Because they have friends, they have cousins, they have business partners there. Why are you not talking to them? Then what you want to do? Kick them out. Best. Okay? That's Singapore, right? That's Singapore. And you know how is when they ask, when Channel News Asia, I think somebody asked them, are you open to foreigners? Now, most of us are okay. The green means okay, the rest means not. Now, that is very worrying. 1/3 of our population thinks that foreigners here is bad. That's stupid. That's a stupid Venetian, right? And then, if you look at the lowest number is the unemployed. So, guys, what happens when more of us become unemployed? We're going to be, half our population don't like foreigners? That's a very stupid thing to do. Okay, and so what can you guys do? Reach out. Make sure that you create communities. And don't be shy. Go reach out to people. You don't know much about their culture, start asking questions, share with them. And I would suggest food is a good way to connect with people. Music, culture, that's a good way to connect with people. Tell people, hey, you want to learn something, I teach you. We exchange, right? I teach you this, you teach me that. I think that works, right? You want to do something in Singapore, I help you set up. But then, do you think we can do something else in Malaysia as well? That's a way to do it. And that Belt and Road Initiative, guys, take a good look at all those countries that are there. You want to be in those places, dudes. Okay, notice USA not on the list. Okay, next. Okay, then also you see that the essential supplies, okay, so water, food, someone mentioned food just now. And so you want to make sure we get self-sustainability as much as possible. Okay, and we want to build diplomatic ties because when you have friends and we are all doing business, they are a lot less likely to want to slit your throat in the middle of the night. Okay, so let's look at Singapore and our vertical farms. And some people say, but we got do farming, we got empty office building now, right? But then our farms are closing and struggling to break even because Singaporeans say too expensive. Then the vegetable not nice. That's how they die lah. And then if you don't buy the vegetable, they close down. Then when you are starving, too bad lah. Okay, then how about Venice? Now Venice is an island too. And in fact, most of their food supply is actually traded. But let me show you what they did. You know, like us, right? They have a few islands. I was just there 2 years ago. Venice has a lot of islands, not used one. It's just sitting there doing nothing. You know what they do with it? See for yourself. See for yourself. This is what they do with it. Okay, and I don't know, I'm not government, but I think we have a few islands, right? I'm not sure why is it there. Right? You know what I mean? No? It's a totally useless place, and then they say got no place to do agriculture in Singapore. Better than nothing, right? Okay. Okay, then next is like energy. Okay, so you look at this is an old-fashioned thing, okay, 2023, 2 years ago. Notice solar power, the white color one, pathetic 4.4%. That's where we get our energy from. Most of it is natural gas. And I give you a hint, okay? We don't produce our own natural gas. Okay, so basically, remember what happened to Pakistan, right? The neighbor don't like you, he cut you off. Just saying, it happens in the air era, you know. Last time can sign treaty, now I'm not sure. Okay, next. The good news is in February this year, it was announced that we are exploring nuclear technology. But you know what happens in Singapore? Exploring means they are studying it. You know they are not building it yet, right? You all know, right? And this thing, I don't know much about nuclear technology, but I think it takes more than 6 months to build something like this. Okay, so I'm just saying that the Titanic has seen the iceberg. But then when they need to turn, they hold meeting first to decide, do we turn now or turn later? You know what I mean or not? A lot of people here work for big companies, right? You know they do this. Okay, next is, now this one actually is real. This part quite good. It's a solar farm, and it's one of the biggest in the world, and it is here in Singapore. So we are investing in things, and we are taking the steps forward. So I'm basically saying, those of you here who are engineers and you know about this kind of stuff, then you can go and offer your services to more and more of these things. We got a lot of rooftop in Singapore. I don't know about you, Singapore will be hot nowadays. If we have to endure the heat, we might as well get something for it, right? Solar energy, yeah? Okay, then one more is that talent. Okay, right now all our Singaporeans love to go where the salary is the highest. And then we wait for the government to plan and to direct, okay, this is how you die very quickly. Okay, so basically, how it thrives is that you want to go where you can build a long-term benefit. So maybe they pay a lot less. And the good news is that as an astrologer who has done this career thing for many, many years now, almost all of you here are my students or my clients. And all of you have come to me and say that I earn this salary now, but it's not a purposeful existence. I want to do something a bit better with my life. Then the one thing that stops you is always salary. Always. Right? So basically, this one, I cannot help you. Right? The truth is there's a disproportion between meaningful and salary. Then you have to decide what is a survival and what buys you your Europe holiday 3 times a year. You decide. Actually, I can tell you the Europe holiday is not an option anymore, so maybe that makes your choices a bit easier. Right? No more already, done already, okay? And what you want to become is a mercantile, agile people who build communities. Right? So basically, people have noticed that we tend to rely on the government. And these are just some examples. This is something called the greenhouse. It's a group of people who help other people to rehabilitate, to recover from drug addiction and other kinds of trauma. I'm not marketing for them, I'm just telling you that there are Singaporeans who are doing these things, and you look at that and you know these people don't make much money on. In fact, they make nothing. Okay? Now another one is this better.sg. Now these people are, a lot of them are tech people, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, they know how to raise funds, they have links to VCs, which means these people have the ability to make a lot of money, but this thing looks like they are doing incubation, experimental projects. So these people have the ability to make a lot of money, but they've chosen to do something a little bit more, contribute to society. Okay, so I think you might want to consider doing a mix of something. If you still have your job, great. If you don't, consider if you want to do something a bit more useful with yourself, you know? Okay, so I want to wrap up here, okay? And so the question here is, who will be our air era conqueror? Big question I always get asked, right? Is it like a US, China thing? And I really gave thought to this because in the past, we had Alexander the Great, we had the people who took Rome down, and we had Genghis Khan. So I really thought about it. I put everybody through the scorecard, and quite frankly, no country really fits the bill. This will not surprise most people, but I think our air era conqueror, the one big one, is not human, it will be AI. Right? Sorry, it's the one thing that is clear. Because the conqueror has to take your jobs, your livelihood. The conqueror has to change your culture. And the conqueror has to have a completely different political agenda from you. I thought of China, I really did. And China might do well. Doing well does not mean it is the conqueror, you know what I'm saying? But the conqueror, you see, AI doesn't have to eat. AI doesn't need a roof over his head. So if he starts controlling the government, I'm basically saying that at least if China is in charge, China still need to eat. But the AI doesn't. AI got no family members, just saying. Okay, so if you talk about a completely different agenda, I think it's an AI thing. And so the question here is then, what is the strategy that we can employ? Okay, so one is that you can lean into the tech evolution. I know some people are learning how to use tech, that's great. But if you want to do it within a large organization, as I said, you'll be temporarily employed until the guy is smarter than you. So again, that's not a long-term solution. Not great, right? But I think you should still learn it, because it would be stupid to not learn it. And then you want to incorporate it. But the key here is you don't want to go and be used by it. Because you work for a big company, you know why you're there, right? You're there to teach that fella how to be smarter. I think the smarter thing is to actually use that fella, and you can't do that when you're an employee. I know this is my favorite topic, and this is the real reason why I've been pushing people to be self-employed since God knows when. Because you cannot be an employee in the AI era. It is a very, very, very bad idea. Okay, and the second thing is to keep your humanity alive. Because like I said, AI doesn't eat, doesn't have culture, nothing, right? And this is where your food matters. This is where your culture and where Japanese people championing sushi, it matters in the AI era. So the thing is, if you have Singlish, speak it with abandon, you know? It's like if you don't really have a lot of old historical buildings, then please preserve the ones that are still around. Okay, and also you want to serve areas that tech isn't great in. Obvious ones are things like plumbing, you know, they cannot fix toilets, they cannot cut hair, they cannot, I mean for now, they can't make char kway teow for now. Right? Hard to get the same taste, you know what I mean? Yeah, so there are things that people do care about, and like it or not, in the AI era, people do need this stuff. Gardening, for example, right? The people still need gardening. Even if they stay HDB, also need landscaping downstairs, right? So the reality is that's what you need to do. And a lot of these jobs right now are not being done by Singaporeans, quite frankly, right? You keep hiring foreigners, then you turn around and say you hate them, right? Which is a bit sad. Okay, so now one thing I want to address is that after all these years of talking to people about the same three things, really it's not new, right? I've been saying this shit since forever, right? But here's what keeps coming up. Number one is the salary thing. And number two, especially for the employees, is that I hear over and over again, it's like I want to do, but I don't know people. I don't know how to connect with people. I don't have money. Or it's like you ask me to go Vietnam, but I go there, I'm like scratch head, no. Then I go there do what? I only go there eat pho only. Right? So Singaporeans love to travel, they go there and eat only. Then they come back and they spend all the money, right? So that's the thing, how do we actually do that? And which is why today, I want to try something a bit special, okay? Now in the AI era, in the Earth era, most of you think of yourself as your job description. You know what it is that you did for your employment. But I'd like to demonstrate something today, okay? By showing you how we can see people in a completely different light. I'm going to start off first. Now Jeremy, can you come forward? Now, I'm going to tell you about Jeremy. He's one of the coordinators in my company. In fact, he do everything that's not astrology. But let me tell you, in the AI era, here's what he started doing. He's going to Malaysia to build houses for orang asli. He has carpentry skills, normally done by Bangladeshi workers. He go there and build house for orang asli. But because he go there, he started connecting with companies that are doing CSR, corporate social responsibility. And a lot of these people are engineers. They run factories, they are lawyers, they are all these international companies, and that means he has contacts. So if you go and link up with somebody like Jeremy, you could have a lot of contacts, not just in Malaysia, but potentially in Australia, in Brunei, in Thailand. Okay, let's go with one more. Rain Lim, are you here? Rain, can I get you to stand up, please? Thank you. And Rain, in the Earth era, he trade forex currencies. Now, based on what I said today, maybe currency, it will change in the AI era. It will change in ways. But what doesn't change here is his skills. Rain has analytical skills. Rain lives in Malaysia. That means he knows businesses. He's helping them to analyze and plan and think. So if you talk about things like raising funds, how to put together an idea that makes sense, he might be a very good choice. Okay, can I go for one more? Jaden Wee, are you here? Can I get you to stand, please? Yeah. And, in the Earth era, Jayden built a website for people. He do Google search. It's to help people make money. Nothing wrong with that. But I know in the Air era, Jayden has been working with AI systems. So things like prompts, a lot of people don't know how to do these things. How do you get the AI to deliver what it is that you want? And in fact, I haven't caught up with him for a long time. I don't even know what he's developing now. I'm very interested. So what happens when you collaborate with somebody like Jayden? You are essentially looking at the potential to build products, to link up with things, and he might be able to show you how to use these things even if he doesn't build it for you. Okay, how about somebody like Ying Ying? Are you here? Ying Ying, can you stand, please? Thank you. Now, Ying Ying is from Malaysia. She's not Singaporean. But Ying Ying has worked with sustainability projects. If you think about in the Air era, we have a lot of problems now. Can you, is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And we have electricity problems. There are garbage disposal problems. She's been working with this for a very long time. So if you want to get context on that, she might be a very good person to deal with. Derek Chu, are you here? All right, Derek, can you come forward, please? Now, Derek is a theatre producer. One thing he knows how to put people together. In fact, he put this show today together. It was him, right? And the thing is, so working with somebody like Derek means you get access to makeup artists, actors, directors, filmmakers. These people tell stories that AI cannot tell. Jackie, are you here? Jackie Chan, right? Now, Jackie used to run a backpacker hostel. That means she knows how to put people of all kinds of nationalities together, even if they don't speak the same language. She get them to live together, backstage hostel. And Shi Xing, are you here? Shi Xing. Now, Shi Xing has done other corporate jobs in his time, but Shi Xing is an aerial artist. That means like Cirque du Soleil, people up there doing all the stunt stuff. Now, Shi Xing is not just a performer. He has done symposiums, and he's brought people together to promote the art form, promote things like safety, but Shi Xing has also brought Singaporeans to Taiwan, to other countries where he's linking out with people. So if you want to know how do you link up with people in Taiwan, you don't think of an artist as being a person who can tell you how to do that, but he's done it. So Hila, Big Zar Data Corey, are you here? So Hila used to help people with special needs, and special needs education. Today she's a Zumba instructor and she makes some real kick-ass Instagram videos nowadays. Right? If you talk about sports, about connecting with people, being healthy, now Sohila is like that. We also have people who are very strong in things like the number 3, which is to serve areas that people aren't great in. Dawn Yo, are you here? We have a nurse in the audience. Dawn. Dawn is a nurse, but I tell you a very special skill that Dawn has. She has a way of saying things online that gets people to really understand what needs to be done, and she can really connect with people. One more, okay, one last person. Shili Kwang, are you here? Shili? Shili? Yes, okay. Shili, in the Earth era, she's HR. But recently, in the Air era, she's been volunteering at E2I, Employment Institute, for the people who are low income. And if you're thinking about building a social project, knowing how to connect with people who are low income, now that could be somebody who can give very good advice. For my friends, thank you very much. Please sit down. Okay. Why did I make them stand? Why did I make them stand? It's very simple. I'm showing you what they were in the Earth era and how there are people who are not multi-billionaire Elon Musk, and they are not people with like super #1 in their world, but they basically found ways, their own ways to reach out on their own. But let me tell you what's one potential difficulty that in the long run we might face, because then people are doing things by themselves. She's volunteering there all by herself. So Hila's doing videos by herself, and Jayden is doing his projects with companies, but then perhaps social worker people, he doesn't really know many of these people. But what I'm saying here is that as you form communities and agile superhero teams. Let me tell you what a superhero team is. It is not a bunch of engineers hang out together. Because if you are an employee, there's a very good chance that all the people you know is from the same industry. If you're a marketer, all the people you know are marketers. Right? If you're a nurse, all the people you know are nurses. Then of course you cannot build stuff. Right? And the thing is, when you have somebody who is an astrologer, a coordinator, a producer, and then suddenly 3 people can potentially put this together. 3 people. Right? Most of you who work in corporate environments, how many people does it take to put something like this together, this entire show? Isn't it? 3 people did this, and with some of my students who are volunteering also. So the reality here is that this is exactly what you need to do, and I have bad news for you. Oh, let's start with the good news first. So what can these people do? You can do skill exchange networks. So basically get them into communities, everybody teach each other what they need to know. That's the first thing. And don't just do it in Singapore. Go to Malaysia and do it. Go to Indonesia and do it. Maybe Philippines might be interested in learning a thing or two. And then you don't just go there and teach, go there and learn also. Right? People know how to do things that you don't know how to do. You got to go out there. And also, cultural and business diplomacy. Right? You want to put businesses together, connect people with food, connect people with activities. That's when the artists will come in. People like Derek, people like Shi Xing, they know how to put a show together. That's very useful. Okay, you can also create a homegrown product. And that's what the Venetians did, by the way. So the Venetians, they created Venetian glass. And that was that one very distinctive thing. And they have a few products that you can only get in Venice. And it was world famous, still is world famous, hasn't died. And so the thing is, you got to start thinking, what can you create in Singapore that is uniquely yours? Because let me tell you, in my research, I found out that Vietnam has started creating their own homegrown tech solutions. It's just that you haven't heard about it. It hasn't been put out in the market yet, but I did a lot of research. Vietnam is coming out with their own tech. Don't be surprised if Vietnam becomes one of the top players in tech very soon. Okay, and social and community collaborations, right? You basically, like I said, it's not always the things that make the most money, right? If you are looking at sustainability, maybe you want to find ways to solve a waste disposal or whatever, then maybe somebody like Ying Ying might be a good person to collaborate with. But ultimately, what happens is that now all these people that I just called just now, do they then form a company and then figure out a business plan? Not necessarily. You want to move quickly across industries. You want to spread out very quickly. So it could be one project, 3 people get together. Could be let's get all people to do exercise. You can get somebody like a Zumba instructor. Maybe the aerial arts instructor can come up with something simple all people can do. And then you could work with somebody like Jackie to get an event going. You could get somebody like Jaden to make sure that there's an IT support, there's an AI support for something like that. And then what you do, once you design it, you put the AI to work and then you disappear and do something else. So basically, you don't find that one career that lasts forever. You do it, you get it done, okay, thank you. Well, nice to see you. Then you go to the next city, which is what the Venetians did, guys. The Venetians don't stay in one place. They don't set up a private limited and make millions of dollars. They don't, they keep moving. That's how the Venetians survived. Okay, and here's the bad news. The truth is, we have about 6 months to 1 year to build something like this. Why? Because the shit hits the fan in 6 months' time. Did you all see my forecast? The shit hits the fan in 6 months' time. That's the whole point of why I had to do it today, right? And so I know it's like school holiday. A lot of people are not even here. Can you see? Right? But the thing is, I had to do it today. I cannot wait already. I could have made more money if I did it next month, but I had to do it today. Okay? And you have 6 months to build something like that. And why 1 year? Because did you see how quickly Vietnam is moving? And did you see how quickly Malaysia could be moving? And the thing is, you know how everyone here just go collect CDC voucher? It's like, seriously, 1 year. That's about the max. And also, I want to tell you one thing is that today my forecast is only for up to 2026. I haven't showed you what comes after. And I can tell you, Singapore can hold on for a while because we got money. Okay, but you know it's not going to last forever. You know that even you come up with fake jobs, right? How long do you think the fake jobs can last? Right? And also, at some point, do you think it will take 2 years for AI to actually learn all the things that you teach him? Probably less. Probably less. I see people shaking head. It won't take 2 years. So even if you get a job and they tell you, don't worry, AI will create new jobs, they will tell you the truth and it will be true for 1 year, 1.5 years. And then what? Then basically, if you are going to be here in my audience, that means I'm treating you as not the normal Singaporean. You are not here to collect CDC voucher. Which means if you want to build something, you got to build it now. And please do it before everybody starts panicking and they all try to do it at the same time. And not as a matter of competition, that is one possibility, but the other is that maybe you need to get something going so that you are actually helpful to people when things happen. Am I making sense? Right? Because let's just say if the bomb happens right now and most of you here haven't built anything yet, right? Even you're good-hearted, you want to help your countrymen, you got nothing to offer them. There are no projects that you can say, okay, you got no job, I come and help. Right? You come and volunteer here. But the thing is, we have nothing to offer people. Do you have the cards? And that which is why what you're doing today, I hope, is to build those cards. Because don't forget that Venice, when Rome fell and Venice was in trouble, they didn't wait for the Doge to tell them what to do. They basically formed guilds, they formed communities. Check your history books. 3 or 4 people got together, they discuss what they can sell, then they carry a backpack, they go to the next country, and then they sell it. That's how they survive. Really. Right? And these are not poor people. Maybe you're thinking, oh, this is what poor people do. Sorry, this is what survivors in the air era do. Okay, so learn to sell. Learn to understand what people need, and then you have to go out there and actually sell. Maybe this is easier for the people who are self-employed. Right? But even then, I think most of us know you cannot run your business the same way. You cannot have one office, then you go and sell that one thing. It doesn't work anymore. So it has to be this movable thing. Okay, there's one last thing I want to share, is that the good news is Neptune in Aries has already moved in, but as of this moment, Uranus has not moved into Gemini yet. If I were you, I'll write down this date, 7th of July. Now, on the 7th of July, Uranus will move into Gemini. And that's when the roller coaster will begin. 7 years, where things will move very, very quickly. And usually, the majority of the activity happens in the first 3 years. Just like, remember the mobile app thing, right? And the e-commerce and the work from home thing. You know, all of it was piled in the first 3 years. And even now, it's still changing, but it was piled in first 3 years. So that's 3 years of super roller coaster. It will start on the 7th of July. And guys, that's 16 days from now. Today is 21st of June. 16 days from now, your newspaper will start to have a lot of very funny news that you never see before. And then you can decide whether may correct or wrong. Okay? But the thing is, here's what I suggest that you should be doing in the next 16 days. Get together with some people of different skill sets, people that you might like to work with, people of the similar mindset. And then seriously discuss about how you can build something and start behaving more like a merchant of Venice and not like an imperial scholar of the Song dynasty. Okay, and with that, thank you. I wrap up the Great Reorder. Okay, actually the main event ended. I just want to add one more thing, okay? Today, I tried my best to go as detailed as possible, as a 4-hour thing will allow me, to touch as many countries as possible. But like I said earlier, looking at a country does not mean that the individual is okay. And that is why I really think that don't just go with whether your country is okay or not. I wanted to just show some of you like a resource that you can use in the playbook. If you turn to the very back of the book, you should see that there's a section called the 46 Timeless Industries. Now, I first featured this in one of my earlier webinars, and it was very popular. Now, what I did is I updated it a bit, okay, because now it accounts for AI. Okay, now this one accounts for AI, and what you can do is there's some instructions there about how you can use it. Basically, you generate your chart, and I've given you sort of like a framework that you can look at in terms of what skills and what do you have to contribute to a team. And sometimes that skill doesn't correspond to the day job that you have. Maybe you've done a job for the last 20, 30 years, and maybe that job is not right for you in the first place, right? But maybe you have other things to contribute. And you can do this with a team of people so that everybody gets a sense of what kind of purpose and what kind of role you might be able to play. And so for those of you, if this is enough, please go and start planning already. And I also wanted to add is that now, in case you would like to go a little bit further, especially if you already have some plans in mind and you would like to get some advice as to whether or not this is aligned with the air era. So I just want to add this one other thing here, okay? So now if you decide that you would like me to do for you what I've done for the countries, okay, especially if you're also looking at a detailed 2-year forecast for your chart. So this kind of analysis is personalized to you. And yes, I will tell you what you're good at, but let me tell you how I can be very, very useful to you. I'll tell you what you're not good at. Because you will need to find other people to work with. In the air era, people don't solo. You will need to find people you want to work with. And then the big question you have to ask is, what do you suck at? So what are the things that no matter how many skills future course you go attend also, you will not be good at it one, right? Then, if I were you, I want to know it right now so that you go and find the person who is good at it. Does that make sense? So if you're looking for a partner or a group member, then at least you know that and you don't waste your time doing the wrong things. And also you can validate your plans. Okay, like I said, if you already have a plan, I can look at it for you, I can refine it for you. Okay. Now if you scan this QR code, you will realize that it takes you to a WhatsApp chat. And so basically what you need to do is to indicate, do you just want a profiling or do you also want a 2-year timeline? Okay, so that's all what you need to do. Now, it's quite possible that you won't get a reply today because, as you can see, they're all busy at the back. Okay, so there's a good chance that you will only get a reply tomorrow. But I'd like you to know that because I actually want you guys to do this. Okay, for today, if you send this WhatsApp chat by today, I'm taking $50 off your consultation. Okay, only because I do this thing today, I want you guys to really spend time thinking about what you want to do. Okay, so if the message reaches us tomorrow, then no discount. Okay, so that means the message has to reach us today. And if you have any questions about that, you can just post it on the thing also. It's a WhatsApp chat, guys. It's a WhatsApp chat, okay? So they will get in touch with you tomorrow and after, just to arrange with you your time slots and whatever, okay? So y'all can do that.